Here.
Mayor Agajanian.
Present. Please read the closed session items into the record.
One is closed session. 1A, public employee appointment, city manager. B, conference with labor negotiators. The city designated negotiators attending the closed session are Mayor Varej Agajanian and City Attorney Michael J. Garcia. Unrepresented employee position, city manager. C, conference with real property negotiators, property location 216 South Brand Boulevard, negotiating parties. Museum of Neon Art Agency negotiators attending the closed session are Rubik Galanian, Mike Garcia, Jillian Van Minen, Philip Lanzafim, Michelle Flynn, and Tamar Saad. Instructions to the negotiators will concern the price and terms for amendments of lease to property. D would be public employee appointment, assistant city attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Jimian. Mr. Garcia, do you anticipate reporting out on any items?
Mr. Mayor, we anticipate reporting out on item 1D, and we may have other items to report out on.
Okay, we will now recess to the closed session. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the March 9, 2021 Glendale City Council meeting. Due to evolving situation with COVID-19 and health recommendations from LA County Health Department, the Glendale City Council meeting will be available to the public electronically. Due to social distancing requirements, the public will not be able to attend the meeting. This meeting can be viewed on local cable, Charter Cable Channel 6 and Spectrum Cable Channel 6, and AT&T Uverse Channel 99. You may also stream online through our website, www.glendaleca.gov, by scrolling all the way to the bottom of the webpage and selecting live streaming, which is the third icon from the left. For public comments and questions during the meeting, call 818-937-8100, which is on the screen. Please don't call in advance of the agenda item. With this being said, may I have roll call, please?
Councilmember Brotman.
Here.
Devine.
Here.
Kasakian.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Mayor Agajanian.
Present. Thank you, Mr. Ajamian. Now, flag salute. Please join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Ajamian.
Please remain standing for tonight's invocation. Tonight, it is our prayer that we may be worthy of the blessings provided to us. We ask for the prosperity and peace in our community as well as our nation. Guide our council as they consider the matters before them and guide them in their decisions for the good of Glendale. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Well, the first question, why is so hot in here today?
Mayor, we just turned it up in the back.
All right. Next item, please.
The agenda for the March 9th, 2021 regular meeting of the Glendale City Council was posted on March 2nd, 2021 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Would be presentation and appointments.
Okay. Moved by Virginia, Mayor of the City of Glendale, that pursuant to Article 9, Section 1 of the Glendale City Charter, Rubik R. Golanian is hereby appointed as the city manager of the City of Glendale, California, effective March 9, 2021. The city attorney is hereby directed to submit the proposed city manager employment agreement for council consideration and approved on March 23rd, 2021. Okay. Before, congratulations, Mr. Golanian. Mr. Garcia, you want to say something?
Well,
Or wanna
before you make
my-
comments and the council makes comments, it'd be appropriate to have that motion, take roll call on that motion.
Okay.
Um,
So roll
for the
call.
record.
Then. Roll
I'll
call.
second the motion.
Okay.
Councilmember Brotman,
Yes.
Devine,
Yes.
Kasakian,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
and Mayor Agajanian.
Yes. Okay, now I want to make my state. Now we know why it's so busy in here. They came to congratulate you. But however, I want to read my statement. I say with certainty that my colleagues and I dedicated a great deal of time and attention in partnership with our community members in identifying the traits and characteristics the next city manager leading our jewel city must possess. At every step throughout the months-long process, Mr. Golanian exhibited the professionalism, temperament, skill, and forward-thinking attributes which we were searching for, coupled with his knowledge of the Glendale organization, professional relationships. He has developed over 2 decades of committed performance in the city of Glendale and 29 years of professional engineering and management experience in both the public and private sectors. He successfully set himself apart as the most qualified individuals to lead this organization. One more time, congratulations, Mr. Golanian. We are hoping that you do your best, and I'm sure you will, and lead us to better Glendale and after we get rid of COVID-19, of course. Thank you very much. Now, anybody else, my colleagues, they have any comments? Mr. Najarian, Council Member Najarian.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, council members, for this process, and thank you to the community for taking time to express your desires for a city manager. We did select Rubik, and this was quite a competitive effort. There were many, many fine candidates who were very well qualified. We felt that Rubik was the best. But Rubik, I want you to know this city is expecting great things from you in leading this city forward. We're expecting a new way of looking at things and a dynamic and energetic person that will engage the community and that will engage council to help us be the best council that we can be and help us develop policy that we're going to turn to you to ask us to implement. So that being said, today is your day of celebration. Congratulations to you. And speaking for myself, I look very much forward to working with you in the years to come.
Thank you. Council Member Devine. Council Member Devine? Okay, Council Member Kasakian.
Yes, I've got
What?
it. I've
Yeah,
got it.
Council Member Devine.
Thank you. Well, new city manager Galanian, congratulations. I'm very happy for you, and I'm happy for the city, and I'm happy for the council. You know, this was a collaborative effort of a lot of people, including our residents and council, et cetera. We're looking forward. I'm looking forward to a lot of your ideas coming to fruition that you mentioned during the interviews. There were ideas that you had that you have not been able to bring forward since you were not city manager, but now you can. You cited ideas in efficiency, innovation, technology, and I know that in your past positions you weren't able to bring those forward, but I'm looking forward to seeing those new ideas come to fruition. I know that you have this funny side of you, this personality that kind of escapes every now and then, that engineer facade, and I'm hoping to see that more in our collaboration and our work. And we have some big projects coming up, big projects that you're aware of, and we all have to work hard at them and work together. And I know that you're ready to take them on. And I just am thrilled that you've attained this position. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kasakian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and congratulations to Mr. Galanian, and congratulations to all of us who call the Jewel City our home. I'll just say that we did go through a process. The importance of this process can't be undervalued, and I'm glad that my fellow council members agreed that a process was necessary and that the candidate that council has appointed this evening went through a process to get to where he is today. Congratulations on that. It was the right thing to do in order to find the right candidate to fulfill the duties of city manager. Some are going to, let's be honest, some are going to look at this appointment, and I'm sure there will be detractors, as there always are, who will say that this is a continuation of the past and the status quo. And I can only speak for myself, although I know others share my thoughts on this on the council, that our next city manager must be someone who can bring about changes in our organization, how we conduct the affairs of the city, and do so by instilling faith in government's ability to address the community's concerns and needs and operate in the most transparent way. So the burden to do this is heavy on Mr. Galanian's shoulders. He has come up through the organization and in the system, but he also understands it. And because of that, he will be the person best suited to bring about the change that I believe that we need and that we hope for. And we're going to hold you to that, Mr. Galanian. We heard from many in the community that it was refreshing that we heard from them. I certainly appreciate that input, and I hope that that will remain a part of this process moving forward. And, one of the things that we've realized through that process is that the perfect person for this position probably doesn't exist. There are so many interests, so many voices, so many people with various needs. No one can be everything to everyone all the time. But if there was a unicorn city manager, then we wouldn't need a city council. We will do our part to help you succeed. I pledge to do so myself. And you will do, I know, your part to help Glendale succeed. So someone once said that when we tell people to do their jobs, we get workers. When we trust people to get the job done, we get leaders. We have a lot of challenges ahead of us that's come out of this pandemic, and through the economic downturn. We need to address the issues of the past and present inequities in this city. We need to reinvest in our city's infrastructure, and we need to remind people that our city is founded on the principles of service to the public above all. And we are trusting you to get this long list of tasks taken care of. And we expect you to be the leader that this organization needs and its staff needs to take it to the future and collectively lift our city to new and greater heights. Congratulations, and I look forward to working with you for the betterment of our city. Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Baratman.
Well, Rubik, I hope you still want this job. We have high expectations, but you've asked for it. But anyway, I do want to say, I'm hearing this echo back. Okay. This is probably the single most important decision we make as council members. The city manager is the CEO of the city, the chief executive officer. It's a very important position. And although we on council make policy, nothing gets done without the organization, without the city staff. And our city manager is the person that leads that staff and is also somebody who brings the information to us that we need to make good decisions. A lot of people will wonder why we went through this search process, only to end up selecting somebody from inside. And I will say it's important that we did what we did. We went out and did a very thorough search. It was a large candidate pool. There were a lot of good candidates. If we had not done that, we would not know that we are getting the best bang for our buck. And it's important that we know that. It's important that we can say to the public that we have looked far and wide and we have selected the best candidate for the needs of our city at this time. And I think we did that. I know that many people in the public want to see things run differently. They want change. They want a change to the status quo. I do too. And I'll be honest, I came into this process thinking that it was important that we bring in somebody from the outside to get fresh ideas. But I'll say that through his work as interim city manager and through the interview process, Rubik really won me over. And I think he does understand that saying that's the way we've always done it is not an answer, that we want fresh ideas, we want changes, and we have a council that's eager to implement them. And I'm convinced that Rubik understands that and has ideas and wants to drive change, but at the same time brings all that deep knowledge of where the issues are right now in the organization and where the change is needed. So I think we're ending up in a really good place. And it's also very important that the council is unanimous in this decision. It doesn't always work out that way, but in this case it did. So Rubik, we support you 100%. We have high expectations, as everybody's saying. I'm confident you're going to do it, and you're going to be the best city manager we've ever had.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I want to go to Mr. Garcia first. Mr. Garcia, you have anything to say?
Well, I'll just say congratulations to Rubik as well. I'm looking forward to working with him.
Okay. One second. From staff, we have staff here. Their department heads are here, actually. They want to say something. At last, word will be to Mr. Golanian. Anybody wants to say something in here to Mr. Golanian? Nobody wants
We want to hear from the man of the hour.
I'm sorry?
So we want to hear from the man of the hour.
Okay, I know, but maybe, all right. Mr. Golanian, it's yours.
Yes, thank you very much. Mayor Agajanian, members of City Council, thank you for the appointment, for the insight that you've provided me, and your kind words. It is truly my honor and privilege to be your next city manager and to continue serving this great community and the city of Glendale that I have been a part of for over 20 years. I sincerely appreciate you putting your faith in me during these trying and unprecedented times and into the future. This is a responsibility that I do not take lightly and will never take for granted. My promise to you, Mayor and Council, is to work with our dedicated and professional staff to have an efficient and modern organization to ensure a high quality of life, thriving businesses, financial stability, a safe community, and a healthy environment for all. We have a resilient and engaged community that I intend to partner with to help us implement Council's vision for the future. Tonight, I feel blessed and fortunate for the opportunity to lead dedicated teams of men and women who, without hesitation, work long hours in 100+ degree weather to restore power, those who collect the trash 365 days a year, those who fight wildfires all over the state, police department personnel and officers who make our city one of the safest cities in the country, those who help our businesses get back on their feet, who help create affordable housing for our residents, maintain our beautiful parks, streets, and facilities, and the list goes on and on. Of course, I'd be remiss if I don't mention our support departments that keep the heart of this organization pumping. Finally, I want to express gratitude and a big thank you to my wife, Maria, for her love and patience, and my boys, Alexander, Christopher, and Matthew, who unfortunately couldn't be here because of the circumstances. Without their love and support, I couldn't have been here. Also, a big thank you to the executive team who, throughout the process, have undoubtedly supported me. Some of them are here, majority of them are here. My extended family, my mother-in-law, my mother, sisters, and brother-in-laws, and to my late father, although who died at a young age, he managed to instill in me the value of hard work and good ethics. We have much work to do. We have, as was mentioned, a lot of challenges ahead of us. But I know together we can turn headwinds into tailwinds to propel us into a brighter future for the city of Glendale and the community. I truly appreciate the honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Golanian, City Manager. I guess this is the first time.
Yes.
City Manager.
Thank you.
So I again extend this opportunity to our department heads. Anybody wants to say anything to Mr. Golanian? Last call. Okay. All right. They all are here and they're not coming forward, but however, it's acceptable. What's next, Mr. Ajirman?
Next would be agenda preview for the meeting of Tuesday, March 16th, 2021. The regular Housing Authority and the City Council meeting for March 16, 2021 have been canceled. The next regular meetings are scheduled for Tuesday, March 23rd, 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Ajirman. What's next, please?
Next would be consent items, including minutes. The following are routine and may be acted upon by one motion. Any member of council or the audience requesting separate consideration may do so by making such request before motion is proposed.
Anybody wants to move the consent items?
I'll move the consent calendar.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Kasakian. Roll call.
Councilmember Brotman,
Yes.
Devine,
Yes.
Kasakian,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Mayor Agajanian.
Yes, thank you. What's next?
Mayor, next item is City Council and staff comments.
I would like to invite my colleagues to share any comments that they have. Is there any comments?
Mr.
Okay.
Mayor.
Yes, Ms. Devine, Council Member Devine.
Thank you, Mayor. I have 3 items this evening. First of all, on Thursday at the SCAG, that's the Southern California Association of Governments, at the Regional Council, we approved the RENA plan, which is the Regional Housing Needs Assessment allocation for Southern California, which included Glendale having a 13,000 unit mandate in 8 years. I'd like to request, with a second from one of my colleagues, a staff report to council on the final outcome, the expectations, and the possible impacts on our city and its residents, and also outreach plans to address this mandate.
I will second it myself.
Thank you very much. Second, I'd like to ask my colleagues to support my request for a staff report regarding hero pay. As you know, the large grocery stores and drug stores have been granted hero pay by many other cities, and they have faced heightened risk on their jobs during the pandemic. And so I would like to, to reward them. And, a lot of them haven't even been vaccinated. I was approached by one of their workers and asked if she had been vaccinated, and they can't even get their vaccination. So for the immediate protection of the public peace, the health, and our safety, these grocery workers have been in the front line during this pandemic, and we all are aware of the increase in the sales of these large grocery stores. I read that it's estimated they've made over $7 billion during this epidemic, and 77% of Californians support hazard pay for essential workers who have not been vaccinated. So I would like to have a second from one of my colleagues that we might bring this before council and see where it goes.
Okay,
I'll second that.
all
In a minute, or if I could, I'd like to make a comment about it, though.
Okay, let me do my my final. My final, and I have spoken to staff about this, and I'm waiting for a report. But this concerns the SB 1818 concessions, and what I have asked, and I'd need a second to bring a report back to council, is to ensure public noticing and a public hearing for all SB 1818 projects that receive any concessions. And I think what we're doing now is we're waiting on a report from Burbank and Pasadena to see exactly how they do it. And hopefully when we get that information, we can bring that back to council and discuss. But I also think that in the interim, we can be, staff can perhaps be posting on the city's website and notify residents within the usual radius about SB 1818 project applications. So I'd like to see that that done, and if I can get a second on that, I'd appreciate it.
I'll second.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's it, Mayor. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Bratman.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on Councilmember Devine's suggestion that we agendize the hero pay issue. And I was thinking of bringing it up too, so I'm glad you did. The only thing I want to add is that there's a certain amount of urgency here. These programs or these ordinances that have been passed in other cities, and by the way, LA County has passed it, LA City recently did, and I understand Burbank and Pasadena are looking at them. They would bump up pay $4 to $5 for grocery store workers that work in stores with over 300 employees. And it would last for 4 months. And given where we are in the pandemic, and hopefully we're going to be coming out of this sometime this summer or early fall at the latest, there's some urgency to bring this back. So if it's possible to get this into our next meeting on March 23rd with an example ordinance, we could take a look at LA's and LA City and LA County, and they may even be identical ordinances. I think that would be important. So I support it. Just asking for us to treat it with urgency. Thank you.
I want to join Mr. Bratman that the way you mentioned it, over 300 employees, $4 an hour for 4 months. I will support that.
Okay, well, I think, Mr. Mayor, LA County and LA City are doing $5 an hour, but we can have that in the report as, options for us to discuss.
Okay. All right. Ms. Devine, we can't.
Cities have done, Mr. Mayor, some cities have done $2 an hour. So that's a decision that we can make when we discuss the item when it comes back. And maybe we can make this an emergency ordinance so that it goes into effect immediately after we okay it, we approve it.
All right.
Thank you.
So we will discuss it then on March 23rd, or it will be at a later time, Mr. Golanian and Garcia.
Mayor, member City Council, will have to put our heads together with staff and see how soon we can bring it.
Okay.
As soon as
fine.
we can.
As long as you will
We
consider.
understand the urgency. Absolutely.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay. Is there any other comments by my colleagues? Okay. All right. So I guess we are done with that. What's next, Mr. Ajimi?
Mayor, we have community event announcement, 3-minute portion. I do have currently 4 callers on the line.
Okay, let's go to our callers.
Roy Velasquez, you're live. Roy, go ahead.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. Good to meet you. My name is Roy Velasquez, and I work at Ralph 97 here in Glendale. I'm a 32-year veteran. I resided in Glendale for 30 years. I'm currently in Burbank. And just to reiterate what was already said pertaining to the sense of urgency that needs to take place for the hero pay, and I can tell you, I worked, right when this whole thing started with COVID, and we didn't know everything about it, but we were told it was a deadly virus. And but you know what? We showed up every day. We came to work. We did our due diligence, and the company has never prospered more since COVID. I believe $1 billion within 2 quarters, and it did a lot of money, and all we're asking for is just a little compensation. COVID has affected everybody, whether they contracted the virus or they've lost loved ones, and you'll never get that back. And as the other cities have jumped on board to help their employees and compensate for what we've done, and we continue to do. And we adhere to the protocols that the company still implements, and we continue to do so. And we'll always put our best foot forward, as we've done since the beginning, but we are still exposed to the dangers. And, I think this is more than just the compensation, but it's about doing the right thing. It's about doing the moral thing. And thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next caller, please.
Lena Parrott. Lena, you're live. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Linda Parrott. I work at the Vons on Glendale Avenue, and I've been at that store. For 42 years, and I've lived in the city of Glendale for over 50 years. And recently, I moved to Santa Clarita. But I believe that we do deserve hero pay. The conditions in the store have been tough. People come in not wearing masks, we don't have access to the vaccine yet, or I don't. We've had loss of friends, loss of loved ones, overcrowding, constant interaction with the public, and we don't have any on-site testing. And we're making record profits. They're making record profits off of us. So I would really like if you guys would hurry up and do the hero pay for us. That would really help us out.
Is staff, Mr. Gulanian or Mr. Garcia, did you guys hear the request? What the caller wanted? Okay, we will look into it, Ms. Perez. We will get back to you.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right, next caller, please.
Angelo Orozco. Angelo, you're live. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Angelo Orozco. I work at the Glendale on Los Feliz and Central. I've been with the company 35 years. I've been in Glendale for 13 years. Just worried about taking the virus home to our loved ones, harassment from customers, numerous calls to Glendale Police Department. People don't want to wear their masks. It's, discrimination. The company still wants us to don't really enforce it to the customers that come into the store, and lost loved ones to it. And not all the employees have got tested. Well, no, I'm sorry, the vaccination yet.
Thank you. Mr. Orozco, thank you. Can somebody explain, I guess this is the issue, what's our rules, regulation on people who are going to stores without mask? Can somebody explain here so everybody on the TV will hear it?
Yeah, Mayor Agajanian, we follow the county's Department of Health protocols, and as such, everyone who enters establishment will have to wear a mask. If we get complaints, we have our code enforcement personnel who will go out there and enforce that protocol, or during the weekends and after business hours, even our police department personnel can do that.
Okay, where they have to call?
818-548-3900.
Okay, 818-548-3900. You may call and get some help. If you see a situation that you are worried, you can't go in, enter the establishment, please call 818-548-3900. Yes. Okay, thank you. Next caller, please.
Dina Weston. Dina, you're live. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Dina Weston. I used to work at Vaughn's in Glendale, and now I'm a union representative for all of Glendale's Ralph, Vaughn's, Rite Aid, and CVS stores. I currently cover just over 700 members who've worked extremely hard to help serve your community throughout this pandemic. Many of those have worked in fear daily. Some have become ill themselves, and some have lost family members to COVID-19 over this past year, all while their stores are making record-breaking sales. Now is the time to show these dedicated members who serve your community every day that they deserve the hazard pay. There's no time to delay, and we urge you to pass the hazard pay ordinance as soon as you can. I appreciate you all for your time.
Thank you very much, Dina. Next caller, please.
Elsa Cervantes. Elsa, you're live. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Elsa. I have worked at Rite Aid in Glendale for 25 years. Working through this COVID at a 24-hour store has been very difficult and stressful. The company's sales have increased so much during this past year, and I believe that my coworkers and I deserve to be paid this hazard pay. For continuing to serve the community through this pandemic, we want this to be an urgency. There is no time to delay. We urge you to pass this. Thank you.
Thank you, Elsa. Next caller, please.
Mayor, that was all 5 callers.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr.
I know
Garcia.
there was a speaker who called in on item 4D and was accidentally cut off. So, I don't know if he's on the hold now. I got a message from Jason that he is, but I don't know if you want to pull that item and reconsider it and ask the speaker
Okay,
if he wants to speak.
Let's pull item 4D.
Yeah, we would need a. Oh, I'm sorry. He says he's on hold for item 6. He's not. Oh, I apologize. I thought he was on hold. Okay.
All right, so we continue. If we hear from the person on 4D, maybe we will pull the item and we revisit it.
Correct.
Okay, the caller can call back. Okay, what's next, please?
Next item is 8. Action items 8A, Public Works regarding architectural and engineering services for Glendale Central Library Youth Services Renovation Project. 1, motion awarding a professional service agreement to Johnson Favaro LLP for the architectural and engineering services for Glendale Central Library Youth Services Renovation Project in the amount of $324,000 plus a 10% contingency, $32,400 for a total not to exceed amount of $356,400 and rejecting all other proposals. 2, resolution of appropriation in the amount of $352,948 in the Library Mitigation Fund to shift funding from Central Library Renovation Project into Glendale Central Library Youth Services Renovation Project to provide adequate funding for the design phase of the project.
Thank you. City Manager, Mr. Golanian. It sounds better than interim, I think.
Much. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Member City Council. As it was read into the record, this is the request for authorization to enter a professional service agreement with a consulting firm for architectural engineering services for the Central Library Youth Services renovation project. And I'm going to turn it over to Yazdan Emrani, Director of Public Works, for a brief presentation on the background and the process. And Dr. Gary Schaefer is also here in case you have questions from the library department.
Mr. Imran. Oh, before we go this,
Good afternoon.
before, you said library. I don't know if I can ask now, but what's our problem with library? I asked, but I just want to be on the record where we are now.
I can't talk about it in this forum.
No, but still ongoing.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. All right. Mr. Imran.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council. There was a renovation project that was done for the Central Library back in 2017. However, unfortunately, due to some budgetary constraints, the improvements to the teen and children's spaces lacked some additional work and needed modernization work that needed to be done. So the library department and public works got together and we developed an RFP to address those issues. And the RFP went out and we received a large number of firms that were interested in this renovation work, 14 to be exact. We went through a shortlist. We shortlisted the top 3 firms and conducted interviews. And we are recommending the selection of the firm, architectural firm Johnson Favreau, for the design for this project. And the project is going to include a lot of, the scope of work is going to include a lot of work, like I said, for the children's room, for the teen space. Basically, we're going to upgrade the restrooms. And this project will involve a lot of interaction with the public and with the City Council to make sure we take into account all of the requirements and all of the suggestions that the general public and the City Council have. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. And Gary is also on this call for any questions that you might have.
Okay. Do we have any callers?
Mayor, no, not for this item.
All right. Okay. Is there any question?
I have questions.
Mr. Schaefer? Oh, he's here. Okay. So you want to comment on this item?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Ksakia.
I'll wait for Dr. Schaefer to make his comments.
Let's wait for his comments.
Thank you, Mayor Agajanian, members of the City Council. We're very excited about this project. Children are our most important asset in our community. Unfortunately, when the renovation happened in 2017, there were some safety upgrades that were made to the space, but unfortunately, the room has not seen major remodels since the early 90s. And as you're aware, the building is approaching its 50-year anniversary in 2023. So would be very excited to be able to offer a premium learning space for our children. And then additionally, we have heavy teen use for a library at the Glendale Central Library, and we would very much like to have a more welcoming space for teens. Right now, they use various spaces around the library. They're welcome to do so, but they don't really have a space of their own, and we would like to create such a space for them, as well as deal with the inadequate restrooms on the second floor.
Thank you, Dr. Schaefer. Now, Councilmember Ksakia.
So, there's a lot of issues that I have had with this, not specifically with this report, but the fact that we even are here. Just for, clarification, how much did the city spend on the library renovation in total thus far?
15 million.
I can defer to Mr. Amirani, but I believe it was somewhere in the neighborhood of $17 million, 17 to 18 million. 20 million
Okay.
was budgeted, but I believe it was between 17 and 18 million that was spent.
So 17 to potentially 20 million, which is a far cry from where I recall it started out with, to where we are today. And the question I have, and that everyone should be asking themselves, both on staff and my colleagues who were on the council before, is how did we overlook the children's section of the library? We talk about children being our greatest asset. Children are the future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Whatever you want to say, but how did we overlook this? The bathroom issue was raised at the time when the library renovations were being proposed, because the auditorium is a heavily used asset by everyone in the community. And everyone was told it's okay, the restrooms downstairs are going to be much better. But I can tell you, as someone who's frequented the children's section through the before the renovation, after the renovation, I'll tell you, it was very disappointing to see that not a single dollar looked like it had been spent in that renovating that area. Now, in terms of the proposals now, I know that the teenager area for space for studying or whatever it may be, hanging out, maybe tried to be shoved into already a cramped children's area as it is, but I would advise that we revise and look at different ways of accommodating our student population that will be using the library as a resource to be able to study somewhere outside of their homes, instead of putting everyone and squeezing them into one area. And I'd like to know when approximately the work is going to start and when it's projected to get done. In addition, by the way, I know that you said 20 million. I also have questions about the remembrance room, because I don't believe that's entirely completed as well. So my question is, I'm fine with spending the extra money to get this done because it is essential. But my other question is, are we going to have to spend more to then get the remembrance room completed? And if so, how much, and when are we going to hear about that?
So, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Kasakian, certainly I cannot speak to, why the children's room was overlooked, other than the safety features, which included some earthquake work in the space. I will say, as soon as I came on board in late 2018, then council made it very clear to me that the children's room had been overlooked and it needed to be addressed. So my hope is with this project now that we are addressing it. And certainly we will take into under advisement your suggestion of making sure we have adequate teen space and not trying to, your words weren't exactly to jam them all into one space, but definitely look to additional space in the library for the teen space separate from children's.
Thank you. Thank you.
And about the remembrance room expenditures or the completion of that?
There's actually some work happening currently on the audiovisual equipment in that room, and that will be brought up to, I believe that's to be completed within the next few weeks. But otherwise, the room is, fairly complete. It allows for us to have flexible exhibits in there with its kind of unfinished, look in that room. But there is some ceiling work that still needs to happen, and I believe they're completing that over the next few weeks, actually, while the library is closed.
And Gary and Yazdan, do you have an idea of the timing?
Yes, once the contract negotiations are done, which will be probably 1 to 2 months, we expect the design schedule to take about 6 months approximately. So depending on the execution of the contract, we're looking at October, November completion for the design.
It is frustrating to me, Mr. Mayor and council and staff, that we had all this time during the pandemic when the library was shut down, we restricted access, and we've waited this long. I'm happy to move the item because I think it's essential and we need to fix this error, but let it not be a mistake by anyone or overlooked that this was an oversight and, in my opinion, a significant one.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second the item.
Okay, I guess Ms. Devine seconded too, but anyway.
Oh.
Roll call, please. Doesn't matter. One of you seconded.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Councilmember Brotman,
Yes.
Devine,
Yes.
Kasakian,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Mayor Agajanian.
Yes.
Thank
What's-
you all very much.
Thank you, Dr. Schaefer. Thank you for coming. Okay.
Mayor,
next-
Mayor, we did have some technical phone difficulties downstairs. May I read item 4D into the record? I do have the caller on the line.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, just for the record, so that item was approved, so you would, council would need to move it to reconsider it and then hear the speaker and then could
Okay.
act on it.
We want to reconsider item 4D. Anybody wants to move it?
I'll move for reconsideration.
Is there a second?
Second.
Need to vote-
Second.
Vote on that.
Roll call?
Yes.
Roll call. Lord.
Councilmember Brotman,
Yes.
Devine,
Divine? She says yes. She said yes.
Thank you. You read my lips.
Councilmember Kasakian,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
and Mayor Agajanian.
Yes. So please read item number 4.
Item
D.
four-
I'm sorry. 4D.
Item 4D is Public Works regarding traffic signal installation and modifications at various locations, Phase 2 project. 1, resolution adopting the plans and specifications for the traffic signal installations and modifications at various locations, Phase 2 project, specifications number 3843, plan number 1-3085, 49-250, 50-661R, 50-674, 50-677, and directing the city clerk to advertise for bids.
Thank you. Mr. Golani.
Yes, so Mayor, Member City Council, I'm just going to turn it over to Mr. Yazdan Emrani, our Director of Public Works. This is a request to amend the contract for 5 fuel kiosk installation.
Mr.
Oh,
Imran.
I'm sorry.
4D.
No, it's 4D. Yeah, it's Mr. Emrani for a report
4D.
on the installation of traffic signals.
Yeah. Mr. Imran.
Thank you, Mr. Galanian,
Do
Mr.
the
Mayor.
speaker first and see what their concerns are rather than go through the entire
Okay.
report.
Let's go to the caller then.
Let's, yeah, that way we can address their concerns.
Alec, you're live. Alec, go ahead.
Yes. Hi, Mayor Agajanian. Thank you for reconsidering the item. I was actually hoping to hear the staff report first, but that's okay. This particular item has been modified since the last time I've seen it to exclude various intersections that I'm concerned about in residential areas. I do support the signal projects that are in this item because they're on arterial roads and they are appropriate for this particular application. But I do hope that council can work with staff to address ongoing community concerns about residential locations for signals, simply because the community is not aware of these projects. There has not been an outreach process, and there's no way for us to communicate our concerns except for when it's coming to council for final approval. So I'm hoping council can work with staff to address those concerns, and particularly to make our residential streets safer and not enable and encourage more cut-through traffic in our residential zone. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, actually, since this came up, I have problem with the Pacific Avenue and Arden Avenue. I mean, this is too close to freeway and very close to Glen Oaks. And adding another light in there, I think will create more problem than solves anything, in my opinion, unless somebody has marvelous ideas to explain why. Because Arden is very close to 134 freeway and very close to Glen Oaks. Both are heavily used streets or freeways. So what we will accomplish by putting a light right in between the two of them, Mr. Yazdani will answer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council. First of all, to answer the question that came up, we did remove 2 traffic signal locations from the staff report, the one that was at Chevy Chase and California and Luis and Lexington, for further consideration. The ones that we have currently on the staff report, including the one for Pacific Avenue and Arden, we did the warrant studies for these, which are basically engineering studies to see if they meet certain threshold requirements as required by the California Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. And in the case of this intersection, there were 4 triggers or warrants that were met, 2 of the main ones being the peak hour and then the crash experience. So based on that, we did the analysis and recommended the design, or did the design for installation of a traffic signal at this location.
All right, thank you. Anyone wants to move this item? May I have a motion for this item?
I'll move this item.
I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Brotman,
Yes.
Devine,
Yes.
Kasakian,
Again.
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
and Mayor Agajanian.
Yes, we go to 8B.
8B, correct, Mayor.
All right.
8B is Public Works regarding fuel kiosk project maintenance and repairs, Phase 3, contract amendment. B1, motion authorizing staff to amend the contract with Cal Valley Equipment LLC for the fuel management key card reader kiosk project, adding an additional amount of $37,844.99 for 5 fuel kiosks installations, and authorizing the city manager to execute the necessary contract change order. And 2 would be resolution of appropriation of fleet management funds to provide adequate funds for Phase 3 of the fuel management key card reader kiosk project in the amount of $37,844.99.
Thank you, Mr. Golanian.
Yes, thank
City
you.
Manager.
Mayor Agajani, member City Council, I'm again going to turn it over to Mr. Yazdan Imrani for a report on this item for your consideration.
Mr. Imrani.
Thank you, Mr. Golanian, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council. This is this project is the 3rd phase of a retrofit of all of our 15 facilities that dispense fuel, and they're located in strategic sites throughout the city. So we've completed the retrofit of 10 of these, and these last 5 fuel kiosks are located in 5 of our fire stations. And because of their strategic location and their use not only for fire stations, emergency vehicle use, but also for our emergency backup power generators, we're asking for an amendment in the amount of $37,844.99 to complete this project and retrofit these remaining 5 locations. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Is there any question? Otherwise, anyone wants to move this item or these items?
I'll move the item.
Is there
Second.
roll call, please?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Brotman,
Yes.
Devine,
Yes.
Kasakian,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
and Mayor Agajanian.
Yes. Next item, please.
Next item would be 8C, Public Works regarding amendment of construction contracts for Beeline Maintenance Facility for Photovoltaic Systems Addition. 1, motion amending the contract with Dorado Design and Construction Incorporated, adding an additional amount of $550,438.56 for the installation of a 135,000-watt rooftop photovoltaic system, and authorizing the city manager to execute the necessary contract change order. 2, resolution authorizing reduction of retention withheld from Dorado Design and Constructions Incorporated for the construction of the Beeline Maintenance Facility.
Thank you. Mr. Golani.
Yes, Mayor Agajanian, member City Council. Back on January 19th of this year, staff brought forward a report to council with this item included amongst other items, and per council's direction and request to conduct additional research and modifications to that item, now staff has completed that work and representing this for your consideration. Mr. Amrani could provide a report on their findings.
Is there any question from staff? Or anybody wants to move the item? Or
I'll move the item.
I have,
you have questions?
I wanted to just make a comment, but
Please,
is Mr. Amrani going to run through it at all, or?
I can ask Mr. Imrani to give information if you want. I thought maybe it's more clear now, so we went through this.
Maybe just for the public, just to hear what the item is.
Because we went through this before, I guess. Oh,
Yeah.
Mr. Imrani.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council. So as Mr. Galanian mentioned, we had brought this item before your council a couple of months ago, and we did some further research, mainly to find out, to ensure that our pricing was competitive. So we reached out to different organizations that had done similar contracts, which is federal contracts with all the similar requirements that we had. And we got results for two specific projects. One of them was the Golden Empire Transit, and the other one was the Sunline Transit Agency, to compare the costs for these photovoltaic systems. So the cost for the Golden Empire Transit was $3.22 per watt, and the cost for Sunline Transit photovoltaic system was $3.64 per watt. Our cost for Beeline is $4.07 per watt. However, the main difference being that for the two systems that I mentioned, they did not include the design or contractor fees. So once you add those, it's a lot more than our price. Whereas our Beeline system, the $4.07, includes all the additional costs. In addition, once this system is installed, it can provide about 65% of the facility's annual electrical demand and reduce the annual electric cost by an estimated $84,000. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Mr. Bratton.
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Imrani. And I was the one that raised a question about the cost and the pricing the last time you brought it forward. So I want to thank you for going back and relooking at it. I think it makes sense now to see the comparison. And I think because it's a relatively small project as far as these things go, we can't necessarily get the kind of pricing we would get on a much larger system. And I hadn't thought that through. So apologies for delaying it, but I think it's all clear. So the only thing, and I raised this with you too, and it's really more for maybe GWP can look at this when they are looking at sites around the city to place solar. If they could just see whether there is the capability of installing battery systems at the maintenance facility. I know you told me that there's not a lot of space. But some of these systems can be mounted on a wall on the exterior of a building. I know for residential batteries, that's the way it works in some cases. So maybe that's possible. At least if they could just take a look at that, that would be great. And I think that would be an added benefit if for any reason that location gets cut off from the power system. I mean, you have some backup, which is something you probably always want to have, right? So that's it on that, and I'm happy to move the item.
Yes, Ms. Devine moved it. Do you want a second?
I'll second it. I'll second
Thank
it.
you. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Brotman,
Yes.
Devine,
Yes.
Kasakian,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
and Mayor Agajanian.
Yes. Next item, please.
Item 8D, Community Development regarding Shared Mobility Pilot Program, award of vendor contract. 1, motion to modify the Shared Mobility Pilot Program to a total of 750 devices upon deployment. 2, motion authorizing the interim city manager or city manager to execute the agreements with Wheels Lab Incorporated and Line Professionals Corporations for Shared Mobility Pilot Program.
Mr. Gulanian,
Yes.
sorry.
Mayor Agajanian, member City Council, this was one of the items that Steph presented to you during our study session on last week, March 2nd, on the Shared Mobility Pilot Program. That was a brief presentation. I'm going to ask Mr. Bradley Calvert, our Assistant Director of Community Development, to walk you through the process of selecting a vendor and recommendation to council for consideration and open it up to question. Mr. Calvert.
Yes, Mr. Calvert.
Great, thank you. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, members of City Council. Tonight, we're bringing forth our recommendation for the preferred vendors to use for the Shared Mobility Pilot Program. If you recall, in September 1st of 2020, we had originally brought forth a single sole source shared mobility vendor to provide services for the city. Based on council direction at that meeting, council wanted us to put out an RFP process and identify more than one vendor to make sure that we were selecting the best potential vendor to provide these services. During that time, staff released an RFP to solicit services for a shared mobility pilot program. This is looking at bicycles and scooters. And what we'd like to do is run through essentially what our recommendation or who we're recommending for providing the service, as well as a potential amendment.
You are getting, we are having problem to hear you, Mr. Calvert. Okay. Our technical staff. Okay. We are.
Mr. Calvert, can you hear us? If you can, please call back in. Hang up and call back in.
Mr. Calvert.
His picture is still on the screen as being logged in.
Cut it off. Still in control. Stop sharing it.
So we can get back in.
Mayor Agajanian, member City Council, I just got a note that we have lost internet connection here at City Hall. So,
Tell me we lost all the council members?
My apologies, I believe I am back up.
Oh,
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you, and we can
And
hear
my
you.
apologies. Can you still see the slides?
Yeah.
Bradley,
Yes.
I've taken control of the slides. What slide would you
Oh.
like it to be on?
Just on the second slide, please, the anticipated regulations. If you could do it from there, that'd be fantastic. Thank
Great,
you, Mark.
great. Is this the one that says anticipated regulations?
That is correct. Thank you.
Go ahead.
So as noted, we anticipate this program, this pilot program, serving for a 12-month term. There would be an option to terminate this program early if council wished to do so. This is really in light of if the program doesn't operate as we expect, if the selected vendors do not fulfill the obligations or meet our expectations, we would have this option to terminate. We are looking at having operating hours between 6 a.m. and potentially 9 or 11 p.m. Again, the goal here is first and last mile connectivity particularly for those that may be working in the service economy that could use another mode of transportation. There will be a public engagement and safety education campaign prior to launching this program so that we can educate the community about what the rules and regulations are, but also give the community a heads up that this is coming, that this is going to be something part of our transportation network. There will be parking hubs. We anticipate those being dockless. They will likely be virtual to begin with until we kind of get a grasp of where users would like to pick up and drop off these devices based on their behavior. We are also anticipating, and part of our RFP selection process was to identify an incentive or a penalty system that would penalize or reward poor or good behavior. This really is in response to making sure the devices are parked correctly, that they may maintain or remain within the service area. This would be accomplished through geofencing. If we go to the next slide, please. This is the proposed service area that would be geofenced. This is predominantly South Glendale, going a little bit north of the 134, San Fernando serving as the western boundary, Chevy Chase serving at the east, and then coming down to the Tropico Transit Center and connecting to Atwater Village and the city of Los Angeles. The idea here is this is where the program would start. Council has made comments in the past about potentially connecting to Glendale Community College. That is something that we would take up as a further conversation later on down the road, and I'll explain those next steps shortly. We go to the next slide, please. So for the Shared Mobility RFP, following Council's direction on September 1st, and then we returned on September 22nd with a draft of what that RFP would look like. The goal here was to identify at least 2 vendors that could provide shared mobility services. We were looking at bicycles, electric bicycles, and scooters. Council did request that anyone responding to the RFP submit separate proposals in regards to bicycles and scooters. So what you'll see is there's a total of 5 vendors that submitted their qualifications. There are 8 submittals, as we had a handful in there that did apply essentially for both bicycle and scooter. Companies were asked as part of that RFP to demonstrate their ability to meet those anticipated regulations that I just went through, and other ones that we anticipate being part of this as well. Next slide. So as mentioned, there was a total of 8 submittals, 5 companies. Aniv, this is one of the companies that we had brought forth at the September 1st council meeting. Bird, which is well known for their provision of scooters. Blue Duck, which is predominantly in the Midwest and southern region in Texas. They provide both bicycles and scooters. Lime, which is a global operation in cities, states, and countries, providing both bicycles and scooters, as well as other devices to meet ADA needs and other services. And then Wheels, which is essentially a sit-down scooter device. They are present in Los Angeles, Culver City, San Diego, and many other cities across the country as well. Any of those indicated with an asterisk had submitted for both bicycles and scooters, though we did look at Wheels as a scooter vendor because of the device that they were putting forth. Next slide. So the selection committee was made up of the planning division, the mobility division of community development, the public works department, and police. This is really looking at those that are going to implement the program, plus police who are going to have to enforce the program and make sure that rules and regulations are abided by. And really, as a collective effort, we're going to need to make sure that these selected vendors are staying on top of any of the challenges that we may need and or we may address. And really, all of these departments are going to represent that effort. Teams were evaluated based on their ability to meet those anticipated regulations I briefly discussed, but also their experience. Do they have a track record of providing a successful service for cities, especially comparable size cities? Public engagement was another big component of that, the ability to reach the city in creative ways, but in a kind of broad swath in terms of providing a safety education and also how this program is going to work. Another important element to this was making sure that we understood the financial stability and the ability to meet insurance requirements. We wanted to make sure that the team that we selected was sound, that we could see through a 12-month pilot program if it does reach the full 12 months, and that we wouldn't see any sort of interruptions or early terminations if that was something that we did not wish to see. Next slide. As you can see, when scoring bicycles, Lime came out as number 1. The committee believed that based on their broad experience, their close proximity to Glendale already, as they are providing devices in Los Angeles, really felt that the customer service ability of the team, their broad reach and their experience and expertise really lended themselves to being able to provide us kind of top-notch customer service. For the scooter devices, Wheels came in at number 1 with their sit-down scooters. This was a little bit of a unique device, maybe a little bit different than what we were anticipating seeing, but we saw a lot of advantages and benefits in that, which I'll go through shortly. Next slide. So with Lime, they have the ability to provide bicycles, electric bicycles, and scooters. As mentioned, they are present in Los Angeles. One of the comments the council made at the September 1st meeting, that it was important to have that interoperability between neighboring cities. So that if someone was using a device in Glendale, they would be able to cross boundaries, city boundaries, and go into Los Angeles to maybe Atwater Village if they wish to do so. Or if someone was coming from Atwater into Glendale, they would be able to cross that city boundary, be able to go over that geofence and be able to use that device for that kind of first last mile connectivity, especially if they're going to the Larry's Area Transit Center. They have a strong reputation for high quality performance, which is something that the entire committee was very drawn to. They also integration or working towards integration with LA Metro apps, Uber apps, and Google Maps. This allows for very efficient trip planning. When choosing one mode of transportation, it may present an alternative to be able to rent a bicycle, for example, if you're using the Uber app, or maybe you're trying to make sure that you're catching a train on time, or you're trying to get directions to a location. That there are integrated connectivity with the Lime app, with those that I just mentioned. They also demonstrated an excellent ability to meet or exceed the anticipated regulations. One of the things that was very important to this was the ability to respond quickly when we had challenges. Part of their service is the ability to respond within 2 hours to clean up devices. So if they go beyond the geofencing boundary, if they are parked poorly, if there is some sort of maintenance issue, the committee had strong confidence that Lime would be able to respond in a very efficient and quick manner for us, which was very important. Next slide. And with Wheels, this kind of picture in the background there, you can see this is a bit of a unique device. This serves as kind of a sit-down scooter. The thing that the committee was very much impressed by was the superior safety record. Wheels had demonstrated a very superior safety of these devices versus traditional scooters. They also integrate helmets as part of the device to be able to use. So we really saw that as a potentially safer alternative than some of the other devices we've seen in other cities. Also important is their integration with Lime. So the committee saw this as a benefit, being that we're going to roll out multiple different types of devices provided by 2 different vendors, the ability for a potential user to seamlessly be able to use either one of these devices and maybe not even recognize the difference that they're moving between 2 companies. So whether or not they choose to pick up one of these Wheels devices or pick up one of the Lime bicycles, we were confident that this would bring us a little bit more integration and a little bit more of a seamless experience for the users in Glendale.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Mr. Brotman.
Yeah, you said that the helmet is integrated. Can you explain, like, where does the helmet sit, and how does the user access it, and how does it not get lost and all that?
So you can see in the background in that image that helmet is affixed to the back of the device. They have disposable linings inside that can be swapped out, and then the user can apply a new lining and use that helmet for safety purposes. We do have representatives from both organizations on the line that can answer some of the other questions in detail. I am not sure if Wheels could answer the question as how they would access this. If I'm not mistaken, it's based on unlocking the device. But if Alistair could answer that, that'd be great.
Thank you, Bradley. That's indeed correct. It's based on through the application itself, and they just have to tap a very easy button, and the device unlocks itself.
Who is speaking, please?
This is Alistair Curtis. I'm the general manager of Wheels in Southern California.
Okay, thank you.
So the user, if I could just, so the user, once they have access to the device, then they're able to push a button, remove the helmet from the device itself, use it, and then they just have to kind of clip it back on. Is there a way to
Yes, that's correct. And it's exactly the same process. They just put it back and then they click the button again, and then the device contracts and locks the helmet in place.
Okay. And if the helmet goes missing, if they forget or they decide they really like the helmet and they want to take it home, I guess you track that, right? And you're able to charge them?
Yeah, so we have a few ways to get around that. We can track it, but we work with the city to come up with an agreed upon process for that.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Okay.
Thanks.
We go to the next slide, please. So staff is recommending Lime and Wheels to be the preferred vendors for this pilot program. As part of this, staff is also recommending increasing the total device count from 500 to 750. The reason behind this is after our conversation with Lime and a better understanding of their business model, that essentially it's financially infeasible to offer the bicycles without the scooters. The scooters and the use of the scooters helps subsidize the bicycles that would be put into this program. We felt that was very important, one, to be able to bring forth the company that did score superior in terms of providing bicycle services. So part of that recommendation is in order to accommodate those needs, but to also offer a variety of different devices. By doing this, we essentially will have 250 bicycles, we would have 250 scooters, and we would have 250 of the wheels sit-down scooters. If council wishes to move forward with this, we would require that Lime maintains a 1-to-1 ratio. So if they decide that they are going to remove 10 bicycles from circulation because ridership is just not meeting expectations, 10 of the scooters must also come away. The goal behind that is to make sure that our device count is not overly flooded with a single type. We want to make sure that for this pilot program, we are offering diverse devices to make sure that we can fairly analyze and assess which of these are most popular amongst residents and users. The same would apply that if council did decide that they wanted to increase the device count later on, if this proved to be a very successful program and we needed more devices, if they were to increase their scooter count, they would also have to increase their bicycle count along with it. Again, with the intent of making sure that there's a fair and even balance of total devices. Again, this recommendation is really coming forth and per discussion with the committee because we did feel that Lime offered the superior service for bicycles and we did want to put forth the top ranking team, and we saw this as a feasible alternative to make sure that that was part of it.
Another question, if I might?
Yes.
Just real quick, the 250 bicycles, how many of those are going to be e-bikes and how many of those are going to be standard manual bikes?
We haven't quite figured out that number yet. And actually what I'll get to in just a minute is upon moving forward with the recommended vendors and if this device count changes, we would again return to council in approximately 30 days or so to go over these kind of final regulations as well as the final balancing of those kind of devices. Because one of the questions that's going to be there is whether or not, during that meeting, will be whether or not we want to connect to Glendale Community College, and that may change that number.
I see. Thank you.
Thank you.
We go to the next slide. So next steps. Pending council's approval of both the vendors this evening as well as the recommended increase of device count, the staff will work with these selected vendors to finalize those regulations, those anticipated regulations that we have put forth. We would return to council with those for final approval. We would also return to council with changes to ordinance that would need to be made. Currently, propelled devices are not allowed in the DSP, so we would need to make modifications to allow scooters, electric bicycles to operate. We would also like to return with the public engagement plan as well. We want to make sure that we're being very transparent with how we're going to reach out to the community, how we plan to deploy these devices, how this plans to work with our existing transportation system. So following tonight's decision, we will move forward with these next steps and return to council probably on several occasions between now and the actual launch and deployment of the program. We go to the next slide. So we put forth these alternatives to assist in council making a decision. The first is to approve the motion to increase the device count to 750 and approve the motion for the recommended vendors, again, with that maintaining that 1-to-1 ratio for Lime. The second alternative that staff has put forth is to not approve the motion to increase the device count, direct staff to go back to the teams that proposed for bicycles and see if they are able to offer those bicycle services, but still a motion to select Wheels as the preferred scooter vendor. And then the third alternative is any other alternative not proposed by staff and direction from council. So that concludes my presentation, and I am happy to answer any questions. And again, we have representatives from both Lime and Wheels who are on the line who can assist in answering any questions as well.
Thank you, Mr. Calvert. We have 12 calls. I think if you... Let's go to the callers because we have so many calls. Please, then we ask questions from Mr. Calvert and...
Mayor, you are correct. We have 11 callers on this item and 1 for oral communications waiting already.
All right. So let's go to the callers. We have 2 minutes per each caller.
Isaac Khachaturian.
Yes. Good evening, dear council members. My name is Isaac Khachaturian, and I've been a Glendale resident for a while. I live at Nixon Lake. I was following the whole process of a ride-sharing adaptation in Glendale with great interest. We all understand that sooner or later, all cities in LA are going to adopt some kind of ride-sharing. During the first meeting in September, I was happily surprised that Glendale City is considering implementing mostly a limited amount of bicycles for the ride-sharings, rather than mainly using scooter devices like in any other cities. We all know that bicycles are healthier and safer than scooters. And I believe that having 250 bicycles in Glendale is a perfect amount to accommodate the ride sharing. However, I was also in agreement to use 500 devices for the pilot program and see where it goes. Today, I had an opposite reaction. When I looked into the proposal subject to today's meeting, and was shocked that out of nowhere, the amount of devices were increased to 750. Why? Where is this idea came from, and who decided that Glendale needs extra 250 questionable scooters rather than bicycles? With these proposals, today's proposals, basically a mainly bicycle sharing program became mostly a scooter or scooter-like device sharing program, similar to any other basic city. Earlier in the presentation by the city member, I've heard an argument that vendors were selected based on their experience and great accomplishments. Seriously, we are seeing what's happening in the surrounding cities. The big corporations like Lime have created a mentality in people's heads that you can just take a scooter, ride it somewhere, and throw it away like a piece of trash. I've never seen someone throwing away a bicycle like they do with scooters.
Mr. Khachat.
Also, there was an argument that people from surrounding cities where the line is also available, they can use the ride-sharing devices to come to Glendale and vice versa.
Mr. Khachaturian, Mr. Khachaturian, Mr. Khachaturian, your time is up. You passed the 2 minutes limit.
I guess I was too emotional. If you just give me 30 seconds, I'll just finish and say whatever I want to say.
Thank you. There are so basically, we have 12 callers.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just against of implementing extra 250 devices, and they'll be like scooter or scooter-like devices.
All right.
And the experience of previous providers, we see they are making the
Thank you, Mr. Khachaturian. Thank you very much.
You.
I appreciate your call. Next caller, please.
Taryn Lizagub? Taryn? Taryn? Taryn, can you hear me? Taryn?
Next caller, please.
Lila Avakian. Lila, you're live. Go ahead.
Hi, good evening. Yes, I'm Lily Avakian, and I'm sure many of you know me as an active community representative. I actually wanted to start by congratulating Ruby Gulanian in being appointed as a city manager. As a longtime Glendale community member, I know his dedication in the city, so congratulations again. Now, I've always been an advocate of local businesses and giving opportunities to those who make our Jewel city shine brighter. I've been following this RFP process, and I'm not sure how the Community Development Office is leaving behind a Glendale local-based company. It goes against our city's values of supporting local startups. I am very disappointed to see that what is being recommended is another startup from San Diego and a large corporation that has a horrible record of rider safety. Not only that, it is also proposed that we accommodate our city's program to a larger corporation by increasing the number from 500 to 750. I really, really hope that the city council members that I chose to represent me as other community members as well make the choice to support local businesses that make our Glendale stand out. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Avakian. Next call, please.
David Martirosyan. David, you're live. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm calling regarding the scooter and e-bike proposal. I saw, and I've been hearing now during the presentation, that Lime was being proposed to be the company in Glendale, the main company in Glendale, I would say. And I wanted to point out my experience because I've worked in Santa Monica and I've used their service in Santa Monica. It was okay. It wasn't nothing horrible. It wasn't nothing for me that stood out. But they just quit. They quit Santa Monica, and they did it, I believe, halfway through a similar program that the city of Glendale is running now, and they left customers and the city empty-handed. It created issues with the city. It created issues for me personally as a customer. I drive from Glendale. I live in Glendale, but I work in Santa Monica. And now they're being, presented as this reliable company. They're not, simply speaking. And I think that the city needs to consider the history of the companies when they're choosing a company that is going to be the main one in Glendale and that is going to provide it. And I think that they've done this in several other cities, and I think that there's a history that needs to be thought of when this decision is being made. I'd also like to point out that Burn and Lime have provided defective braking systems. They're being sued for that now, but they're, for whatever reason, being presented as if they're these they have this amazing history. But if you look at the history, actually, if you look behind it a little deeper into the history, you'll see that there are many issues. And I hope, and I don't know the other companies, but I hope that the city council members don't just look at what the promises are that are being made, but rather look at what actions have been by those companies that have actually done these programs for a long time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Martirosyan. Next.
Narek Parlakian. Narek?
Hello, dear council. My name is Narek Parlakian. I'm a resident of Glendale. I've been a resident for 20 years. I live on Lexington, which is Lexington and Columbus, which is one of the central areas of Glendale. And this is very concerning to me. First of all, seeing the number of scooters being implemented. During the last meeting, my impression was Glendale was trying to become a healthy bike city, but this proposal seemed to be making it a scooter city, not a bike city. Scooters are not healthy. They're not as safe, and I definitely support bikes. And being a resident of we call it Jewel City, I think that's what really makes it a Jewel City is valuing the traditions and caring for our community and caring for the health of our community. Scooters are very concerning for me and many other members of our community, and we have seen some backlash from other cities, residents of other cities, which is making us even more concerned. I think the city needs to reconsider the health impact of what they are choosing and make sure that the bikes are not marginalized, which the current proposal does. And that's my point of view.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Parlakian. Next caller, please.
Christopher Vardanyan. Christopher, you're live. Christopher?
Yeah, hi there, council members. My name is Christopher Vardanyan, Glendale resident. I'm a local business owner, and I have some concerns about this motion. Since COVID hit our community last year, all of the city mayors, council members, they urged us, encouraged us, the residents, to support local businesses. But right now in this motion, I don't see that city council is doing the same. Why was Lime and Will chosen, B corporations? And I just heard that the Lime was represented as reputable company, which is not. If it was so, why did they fail in the city of Santa Monica? Why did they bail out from there? And this is not like we're supporting local businesses. And what I got concerned more while listening to you guys, to you, like increasing number from 500 to 750 to feed Lime. So this raises a lot of questions for me. First of all, it proves that big corporations are not good for Glendale because all they think is about just making a profit. But locally based company, which apply to, will approach to this matter with tender love and care. That's for sure. But Lime and Will, and it's known that they're connected to each other. I'm not sure. However, big corporations based somewhere else just want to do business here, thinking only about the money. I'm a local business owner, and I do my business with Henry Ford's ideology that business that thinks about money is a poor business. And increasing number from 500 to 750 to adjust for Lime, it's nothing but only about money, making a profit.
Thank you, Mr. Vardanyan. Thank you. Your time is up. Thank you. Next caller, please.
Nina Garayan. Nina, you're live. Nina?
Yes, good evening. My name is Nina Garayan. I'm one of the owners of a local Glendale-based restaurant called Plate and Pedal. I'm calling to express my support for one of the shared mobility companies that's a local Glendale-based company called Anif. My support isn't only based on the fact that Anif is a Glendale-based local startup, just like my own business. My support is also based on what I see, how Anif behaves as a new startup, as a business. It was the only business that actually reached out to Plate and Pedal and offered to help each other, support each other as local businesses, to combine resources, again, as local businesses that operate, that are based in Glendale. This, to me, shows dedication, hard work. This, to me, shows dedication to the Glendale community, desire to help other local businesses. And honestly, it just shows that this is a company that can benefit the Glendale community. I have no personal interest in this business, but I felt like it's my duty to support them because honestly, it feels like this is the only company that cares about the other local businesses. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Garanian. Next caller, please.
Rose Gabrielian. Rose, you're live. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Rosie Gabrielian. I'm also a member of the City of Glendale. I'm mainly calling in regards to cost because, as you know, the users of, the scooters and the bikes are interested in cost and affordability. Companies like Bird and Lime, they increased their prices a lot during the last couple of years. They started out affordable, but it ended up being almost cheaper to call an Uber than to use their scooter. So I was looking at the proposal and I saw that it's $1 to start and 39 cents per minute, but I was wondering if that is the lowest option available within the RFPs. Glendale residents are going to be paying for their rides, and I would like to know if there are any cheaper alternatives available in the RFP proposals that you received. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gabriele. Next caller, please.
Tanya Sahakian. Tanya, you're live. Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Tanya Sahakian. I grew up in Glendale, and I work at a local startup called Disco, and I'm an advocate for local startups. I know that Glendale just started its accelerator program and has been working towards creating a tech hub in the city, supporting local startups. I work for one of those startups, and I'm proud of what we have become in just a few years. And Glendale and its support has been a huge part of this, and it's brought jobs to Glendale. Now, in this pilot program, you have a chance to also support a local startup, but you've instead selected bigger corporate companies. Can you please explain why you are not supporting a local startup in this initiative and you're giving a chance for bigger companies? And yeah, I just wanted to know what made this decision.
Thank you, Ms. Sahakian. Next caller, please.
Stepan Nersisian. Stepan, you're live.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi, my name is Stefan Nersisian. I am the president of Pan-Arm Incorporated, and we represent 3 local TV stations, Pan-Armenian TV, Armenian TV, and Public 81 Armenian TV in Glendale and LA. So I'm calling to say that as a local business, we always support local startups. And one of those nice and successful startups called ANIF, which is a really good company. And we have some early stage conversations with local-based ANIF on how we can cooperate in future. So I will strongly suggest and advise to try and give ANIF opportunity to be one of the shared mobile providers in Glendale. So I guess like all local businesses can be working better together, and it's good for the city as well. So thank you so much. This was my only comment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nersisian. Next caller, please.
Taron Lizagub. Taron?
Hello. Hey, guys.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
I'm a virtual reality scientist and founder of Knox Labs. We manufacture virtual reality headsets right here in Glendale. And I've been a big advocate of startups and tech in Glendale and keeping everything in the community to grow the community. I kept my company here with that in mind. But from what I'm understanding is you guys keep on preaching Glendale Tech, and you guys end up succumbing to the needs of bigger corporations, changing from what I'm understanding. This is what the city member was saying. They changed the RFP from 500 to 750 to accommodate the needs of line. When instead we can work together as to push each other up as local companies. I don't understand why this was done and why you guys keep pushing Glendale Tech and not coming with your actions, just plain words. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What was the name of caller?
Taron Lizagub. Taron, Taron Lizagub.
All right, thank you. Next caller, please.
Mayor, this is Mrs. Devine.
Yes, Ms. Devine.
Yes, can we have Aram take the MyGlendale logo off and replace it with the council? Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you. Perfect. And Mr. Calvert. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next caller, please.
Mamigon Khachaturian, you're live. Mamigon?
Good evening, council members. My name is Mamigon Khachaturian, and I'm representing Mr. Ashid Haritunian, who's the co-owner of Kara's Restaurant located on Brown Boulevard in Glendale. I'm calling to share that we have had some preliminary discussions with ANIF, which wasn't selected as one of the 2 vendors, on how we can cooperate to get better service to our customers and support each other's businesses. Mr. Haritunian doesn't have any financial stake in this, however, is confident that cooperation between 2 local businesses such as Kara's and ANIF will serve to the best interests of our Glendale community instead of selecting a vendor outside of Glendale. With this in mind, Mr. Haritunian would like to voice his support for ANIF's candidacy for this pilot project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Khachaturian. Next caller, please.
Albert Manukian. Albert, you're live.
Hi, dear council members. This is Albert Manukian, the founder of famous startup company local-based called ANIF, on the proposal of one of our RFPs. I've been noticed I can make a quick comment for the public comment section, and I also want to make myself available to the council in case you have any questions. ANIF, as you already heard, is a Glendale-based startup company, and I live and own a home here in Glendale. Most of my time is from Glendale as well, and my team as well. So we have a unique ability to hear, to understand the issues of our city, unlike any other companies and corporations, and have a technology and operation capacity that matches any of other proposers and surpass in some areas as well. The highlight we see in the staff proposals, such as geofencing, no-go zone, parking zone, incentives for good behavior, are all things that ANIF excels in. We hope this may be a breakdown towards scoring provided, because the current recommendation does not provide any insight or objection on the selected process. Ani brought all the attention to the Glendale, this opportunity, because we feel our city deserves to have the best transportation system in our Glendale. As a local business, we know the DNA of our city and want to work with the city and the local neighborhoods to make the micromobility a resource for Glendale, not an inconvenience. So our technology capability and flexibility will allow us really to do such things. So my hope is that the city of Glendale will support a company that not only has the technology and operation capability to provide a service for Glendale, but also care about our city and residents. As a council members, I know that you are elected to make the best choice for Glendale, and we believe Anis can be that choice. Is there any questions? I'm more than happy to answer.
Yes, Ms. Devine, I guess have a question.
Yes, I do have a question for him. Thank you for calling in. My question to you is there's been some, one of the callers mentioned that the prices or the fees for Lime are higher than a lot of other companies. I think it was $1 to rent and then 39 cents every, what is it, mile or every hour? I can't remember. I think it's a mile. What are your costs lower? Are your fees lower?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. So the offer which staff made today, they mentioned that the price is $1 to start and 39 cents per minute actually. In our case, in our case, it's 29 cents per minute. So basically, it's 25% cheaper than the selected potential candidates are.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Manukyan, for the information. Next call, please.
Mayor, that was the final caller.
Thank you. Okay. Now, I'm just curious. I remember Ms. Devine, maybe remember Mr. Najarian. We went through this before, and we said we want only try like 500 units. We had problem with this. We postponed it before, and eventually we agreed to try 500 units. I don't know how this came about. We came 750 units. That's the first question I have. Anybody can answer? Mr. Calvert?
My apologies, I was on mute there. Could you repeat the last portion of that question?
I said we went through this before, and previously we didn't want to let any scooter bicycles to come to this city. Eventually we agreed to it, and at the end we said, let's have only 500 units. To allow only 500 units and see how people react to this, whether they are agreeing to it or they want to see these scooters, bicycles in town. But now it's as if the staff is saying that 750 units is better. That's the question. How this came about.
The reason why we recommended the 750, if we were to choose these two companies, was to make sure, in this case, we were presenting the top-ranked company from that selection committee. There was a bit of a score disparity between the number one firm and then going down to number two and number three. So we wanted to provide this as an alternative, as a means to still select that number one scoring firm for bicycles. If council does not wish to pursue that path, that's why we included the second alternative, which would be to direct staff to go back and negotiate with the next team in terms of the scoring for bicycles to see if they could provide it within that device count of 250 bicycles, 500 total devices. So there are two alternatives there for council to consider. We just wanted one of them to have that a path essentially.
We lost you. Can you repeat the last sentence? Mr. Calvert?
No, he's frozen.
Okay, here comes Mr. Lanzafin.
Mr. Mayor, till Mr. Calvert gets back, believe the idea behind that is we've given alternatives. the highest ranked firm needed the 250 scooters to make the bicycles work financially. If council would prefer to leave it at 500, we could go to the next or any other vendor that you choose and ask if they could do 250 bicycles, leaving wheels as the preferred scooter.
Yeah,
Those are the alternatives that we were talking about in that second bullet.
all right. Which one is the one which would come to 500, first or second? Which one is it? I forgot now. Which one is first? Which one is second?
Well, I'm sorry.
500 units.
The 500 units would be 250 scooters. Again, we would suggest wheels. If you wanted to do somebody separate that didn't increase the number, we would then look to the number 2 firm on bicycles, and I believe that was Blue Duck. Or we could look at Ani if that's what you wanted. And
Okay.
negotiate, and see if they could provide the 250 bicycles.
One more issue before I go to I guess my colleagues, they want to ask questions or can make a comment. Did we look at whether these companies have complaints, lawsuits? Because there is a page here, it says 166 of 465 or 82 of 137. And it says that everything is fine. I don't know it says they have no claim and lawsuits apparently, and everything is no. But I know these companies with the scooters and bicycles, they usually have lots of problems, lawsuits, complaints. So what's their qualification as far as lawsuits or how many lawsuits is pending, or what's the record? Let's make it easy.
I don't know how deep we investigated into existing lawsuits or claims against the companies. We did evaluate them on experience. Longevity would be part of that experience. How long have they been providing this service? If Mr. Calvert's back on, maybe he can speak to.
Mr. Calvert?
That is correct. What Mr. Lanzafame was outlining there is we asked for the information if they had pending lawsuits at the time, but we didn't dig deep to understand every nuance to that. We wanted them to provide a track record that they were able to provide a safe and reliable service, and that they were free of those type of lawsuits, and those that did submit it were able to demonstrate that to the level of review that we did as part of this.
Thank you. Okay, now Ms. Devine. Ms. Devine.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So this particular pilot calls for 250 bikes, 250 scooters, and 250 wheels. Am I correct?
That is correct. That would be the first alternative, yes.
Okay, right. Now, another misconception that I think I heard on the callers was that they think that the city is going to be receiving revenue from this pilot project, but we are not, are we?
We are not. That is correct.
We are not. So what my first question to you is, what is our bottom line? If we, you're talking about, and this is another concern of mine, the hub parking. Who is going to put, let's say, markings on the street? Who's going to be paying for that? Who's going to be, one of the Wheels representative said, well, if the helmets are stolen, we'll have to work it out with the city who's going to pay for it and how much a helmet is going to be or what that's going to cost. So the bottom line for the city in this particular iteration of a pilot project, what is our bottom line? We're not receiving anything. What are we putting out?
The plan is to not put out anything either. The plan is to go forth with virtual hubs to better understand where devices would need to be parked for optimal ridership. Through this process, as part of the pilot program, we would evaluate that. We would evaluate where devices are most frequently picked up and dropped off. If we moved into a permanent program, we could then present alternatives on how we could create more visible parking hubs, if that's what the council wished to do, if that's what we saw the need for in the program. That would ultimately be funded by the permitting fees that we would put forth in terms of a permanent program. But because this is a pilot program, we're not putting forth any expenditures for physical improvements or physical changes, but we're also not collecting a revenue share on this either.
Okay, another question is, so there would be permit fees for Lime, or for whoever the vendor is. They would be paying a permit fee for the scooters and the bicycles, et cetera?
For a permanent program. For the pilot program, we have not proposed that as part of this. And if I could go back and answer one of your earlier questions / statements regarding the helmet. I believe what Mr. Curtis is referring to is what we'll do is part of those kind of final regulations is come to an agreement on a fee, fine, penalty, or reward system that we would put forth to council. They will work with us to help calibrate what we believe that fee should be in order to discourage negative behavior. We wouldn't be on the hook for replacing any of their helmets. That's ultimately up to them. And we would just be working with them to establish those fines for poor behavior and to continue to discourage it.
Okay, all right. Next question is, of all of the 3 finalists that we're looking at, of which you have staff is recommending Lime, did the other 2 finalists demand, or not demand, but did they require scooters in their pilot program, or is it just Lime that has to meet their bottom line with scooters? Could any of the others do a bike program for us without scooters?
That would be a discussion that we would need to go back and have with them per alternative number 2.
Okay, all right.
But I do
jobs. Okay, and I guess we have representatives here on the line, and maybe they can answer it. This one of the pluses when we were considering doing a pilot program like this with bicycles and e-bikes, and what was the jobs that could possibly be generated from this project. Would Lime and Wheels provide these jobs for local residents? Or I noticed that Wheels does, they have, what do they call them? Specialists in what is it? They have specialists in maintenance, field, and recovery, but they are trained. Are they going to be their employees from all over the state or the county, or will they, in the agreement, say that they will agree to hire local?
I would turn to Mr. Curtis and then also E.B. Ellington from Lime, if you could answer those questions, please.
Thank you.
Mr. Representative of Lime. Are they online?
Still here?
Yes, we do have both on here. Mr. Curtis from Wheels, is that a question you could answer?
Thank you, Mr. Calvert. We have our central operations warehouse based in Culver City, and we conduct all our operations from that facility. We hire folks from all over the city of LA and greater LA, Glendale. So we actually don't say that you have to come from a particular geography to work for us. We employ workers on a very fair process, and that's how we go about it.
Okay, and what about Lime?
Hi, E.B. Ellington here from Lime, the general manager. We committed an RFP and are committed to working with the city of Glendale to host a job fair and hire locally. Our warehouse for the LA area is based in Hawthorne, but we would love to be able to support the local members of Glendale in helping provide employment.
Okay, thank you. Now I'm just going to make a few comments. Those are basically the questions I had. When this first came, Mayor, you and I were here, and I think the two of us were against scooters. I was against scooters because of the safety, because of the the accidents that we were hearing about and seeing photos of and reading in the newspapers, et cetera. And then we also considered the visual. And now with this virtual hub parking, I'm conjuring up visions of this virtual hub parking and what that's going to be. And it's not a pretty picture for me, especially with 500 scooters in this city. I would prefer if we went back to negotiations and try to find a company that will do bicycles, e-bikes, regular bikes. The wheels seems interesting to me because of the safety factor, although I don't know if we have any studies. Did they include, I tried to read that whole, the RFPs. Were there studies in there? I know that they mentioned they were safe because of the helmets and the speed is, 14 miles an hour. But are there medical studies, accident studies that prove that they are less dangerous? I would need to know that before I would give an okay to wheels. So, I'm not happy with 750 of these on our streets, especially 500 scooters. I'd rather see a few more bicycles and e-bikes than I would scooters, definitely. We have to make sure that they're on the streets. Enforcement, I guess, is going to be up to the companies. Is that correct? Who's going to be in charge of enforcement? Some of these scooters on the streets, on the sidewalks. Who's going to be enforcing that? Move off the street and off the sidewalk and onto the street. Who's enforcing that?
In the case of, I believe it's Lime, they actually provide a sensor that will notify whether or not that bicycle is not on a street. If it's on a sidewalk, they'll have penalty and incentive systems for that kind of behavior. But similar to how we would any other cyclist, we would also bear a burden of responsibility for enforcing if someone is riding on a sidewalk.
And there's more funding from our city, so it's not completely revenue or expense free. So anyway, I would recommend that we go back to the drawing board with negotiations and see if we can get a vendor that doesn't need to put all these scooters on our streets in order to reach the bottom line or make their bottom line. And more research on wheels to see if that they are truly safe, and then I might go for that. And I think there is a great point in going local, because I think if we go local and give these I'm assuming they're young people, a chance. We're not paying for this. They're not paying us. We have nothing to lose. It's a pilot program. If it works, then we can go out and say, hey, maybe we can find a better company than, what is it called? ANIB. But for a pilot program, why not go local? They would probably be certainly hire local. If they can do this without scooters, I'd be ready to approve it in a New York minute. So those are my comments right now, Mayor, and thank you for the time.
Thank you. And now we have one caller. Let's listen to our caller.
Albert Manoukian, you're live, Albert.
Hi.
Hello.
This is Albert Manoukian, co-founder of ANIF, and I would like I heard a couple of questions with addressed to vendors, and I would like to mention regarding the bottom line that in our proposal in RFP we don't have any bottom line, so we don't need to increase and put any kind of extra motion to put.
Is the caller online?
Sorry, sorry, you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
And we don't have any bottom line, so basically not need any extra motion to put extra devices, which I truly believe to running this business almost 3 years, that make in a pilot program many devices on the street, it can really create a mess. It doesn't matter we use virtual stations or any regions designated, it still can create the issues, and we used to have those kind of. So definitely go more, it will really create more problems for our city. And after pilot, we can come back and understand all together down the road what really can be done using all data-driven technologies.
Thank you. Okay. Any one of my colleagues want to comment on this? Mr. Najarian, Council Member Najarian.
So I have a few questions, but first I want to talk about the process. This was an RFP, correct? Not a request for qualifications.
That was correct.
And I read the RFP. I don't see how the scoring was indicated. I think that should have been in the RFP, no? Where it says you get 20 points for your experience and whatever, 10 points for your safety and all those other factors. So is there a reason that wasn't in there, or is it just council didn't get that?
We listed the criteria that they were scored on. Some of that did include some of the elements that you listed there. My apologies, I don't have that in front of me right now to list off the entire all the points. So I believe there were 7 or 9 total points that we evaluated them on. Right, 7.
So were there set points for each of those categories?
There were. I would need to.
I mean, I don't need to know what they were, but these weren't just all thrown into one bundle and you decided which company was.
No, not at all. They were broken up by that criteria, categorized based on each of those elements. And then they were also evaluated based on things like fiscal responsibility, fees that they offered, or I'm sorry, not fees, but the rates to use the devices. Some also offered low income rates as well. That was factored into pricing.
Okay, so here's my point. I mean, I very much, all the callers obviously were making very good cases for hiring a local company and going with them. But that's not one of the criteria. So can we do that, Mr. City Attorney? Can we say, I want to hire a local company and just hire them for this pilot project, despite the rankings? And wouldn't that be grounds for a protest by the other vendors?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, that's something I guess I'd have to look at a little bit more closely if we're going to go in that direction.
I mean, that's my experience, is that when you set an RFP and you're grading companies on those criteria,
right?
You can't just bring in a new criteria and say we're going to give bonus points because you're a local entity. Perhaps when we did the RFP, we should have put that in as a criteria, that you get extra points for being locally based or having local jobs. I think Ms. Devine was talking about creating jobs in the community. So in terms of the process, I'm a little, I just went through this an hour ago with a little larger contract, but it's a very, as I understand it, it's a very set process that if you deviate from it, let's say Wheels or Blue Duck could say, hey, wait a minute, that wasn't what we were scored on. We were scored and we got these many points. So if you're going to talk to someone, talk to us next, or, go down the list. If, as is pointed out, the Lime proposal with the extra scooters doesn't seem to be fitting within what we were asking for. It was like an amendment or an add-on to the proposal. So that's an issue I have on that. And I don't know what, I'm a little, before I can talk about who's going to be in charge of repairs, who's going to, park these, who's going to retrieve them, what are the rates going to be? I'm sort of stuck on that issue. So I'm going to just turn it over. I might jump in again, but that seems to be it. I mean, there might be some support for local hire, but unless that's a criteria, we just can't jump down the list and pick up Aniv and say we want Aniv. We're going to have legal issues.
Okay.
Anyway.
Thank you. Mr. Botman. Mr. Botman.
Yeah, that's, well, what Councilmember Najarian just raised is something I wasn't thinking about. I thought, and so more guidance on that would be helpful. I thought, ultimately it's our decision and we don't necessarily have to go to the highest ranked company this is not like, hiring through the civil service process. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I mean, all things being equal, I like the idea of going local, but I mean, ultimately, I think the most important thing is that, people use the program and they use the devices, and that it's safe, and that, it doesn't cause problems within the city. So those would be, my top priorities. But so I like wheels. I like what I read about them, and when I solve their device and the helmet and everything. It looks like that's a cool approach to doing scooters. And so, Mr. Calvert, you said that we didn't ask Blue Duck or Aniv whether they could do 100% bicycles, or what kind of mix they could do with e-bikes and regular bikes. Because I think, all things being equal on this, I'd rather just see like wheels for scooters, and then have somebody do just pure bikes, and ideally have a good number of e-bikes in there, because e-bikes really are going to make it so much easier for people to, people of all types, all ages, to be able to take advantage of this, and I think it'll make it more successful. So we didn't ask that question.
No, again, the scoring disparity between the first, second, and third ranked teams, we wanted to bring forth the highest ranked team. But as part of this, we also wanted to bring that alternative too, if council did wish for us to go back and talk with the other organizations and see if they could provide that.
I mean, my vote would be, move forward with wheels, starting to work out any implementation issues. But go back to Blue Duck and Aniv and see what they're willing to do as far as their mix of bikes, and ideally they'll just do bikes, and do a good number of e-bikes, and also look at the pricing, because ultimately, if it costs too much, people aren't going to use it. So if they're able to do more or less the same thing at a lower price, and they're local, well, in the case of Aniv, that's pretty attractive. So I guess I'm with some of my other colleagues with saying, like, let's go back and dig deeper on the bicycles.
Mayor, this is Mrs.
Yes.
Devine. May I
Ms.
ask
Devine.
Mr. Garcia a question? May I ask Mr. Garcia a question?
Yes, he's listening.
Thank you. Would it be easier or better if we reject these proposals, like if we're, walking a thin line, to reject all proposals and issue a new RFP with local jobs as a request, and get local, if it's a local company, give them credit for that? Would that be a way of getting around this issue of all of a sudden throwing in another requirement?
Members of council, Councilmember Devine, that's certainly an option. You always have the right to reject all proposals and then start over again. That's not really getting around anything. That's just rejecting the proposals. Another option is to reject the proposals and direct staff to negotiate with one or more, and then we'd have to bring it back and potentially dispense with bidding at that point, just to be safe legally. We would look at that. So that's certainly another option available to you.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, that
Thank
could work.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Kisaki.
I'd like to make my comments now because I've been listening to what's the discussion and to the report and to the presentation. And I want to first say that I think it may have been last week or the week before, we were having a discussion. Well, we had the Safe Streets discussion last week, but we've also talked about how we can improve the biking culture in Glendale. And I think that there was agreement, or at least a lot of heads nodding from staff and from council about bicycle safety issues. And I've raised this issue a couple of times. I know a couple of my colleagues, at least one other one, has raised the issue of modifying our rules so we can ride on the sidewalks and be safer. And so, you know, to sit here today and have this proposal that tosses 700 vehicles onto the streets of Glendale is somewhat puzzling. I mean, staff had brought a great test pilot project. At that time, maybe it wasn't called Ani, but I think it was Velio, same company. They were going to work with us to have a Glendale branding to it. There were issues raised of metro connectability, and the metro bike share program, which I didn't see necessarily a clear response to as to what's happening with the metro bike share program in terms of working with Glendale. And my assumption is that it's either not in the foreseeable future, or it's going to go the way that it did in Pasadena, which is it's not going to happen. And ultimately, what we're trying to do is create and change a culture of mobility in Glendale. And we have to start off, and I think we all agreed with the initial staff proposal that we should start off small. With this proposal, my issue with it is that staff is almost forcing more vehicles on us simply to appease and satisfy the bottom line of a corporation. And that's not my intent. My intent isn't here to aggrandize or enlarge the coffers of any corporation. It's to have a program that's going to successfully change the culture of biking in Glendale. We talked about electrical bikes. We talked about expanding it to the college campus. We're talking about it primarily being for our residents and people within the city to drive less. The person who's living on the east side of the city to not feel compelled to use a car to go to the west side of the city, or from north to south, or within our downtown. So we had a proposal that we decided to, for whatever reason, to decide to go out to RFPs. Ms. Devine was the only one who voted against it at the time because of the scooter inclusion. And I went along with my colleagues because I felt like, okay, this will be an exercise and we'll see, you know, something more better fleshed out with what council's desires were. But I have to tell you, I'm not very happy with the inclusion of scooters, because I do think that the scooters, everywhere I've seen them in other places, they may be a convenience, but they're also a hazard and a mess, and the safety factor of it has not been established. I would much rather see us go back to the initial staff test pilot project, which had an option for us to cancel it after 3 months if it was not working. We obviously have a team locally here in Glendale that's hungry and willing to make this work. They want to make it work, and I think that we want to see it work as well. So we test it out. And if it works and there's a greater demand for it than we expected, maybe the legislature comes in yet again in their infinite wisdom and decides to allow bikes and scooters everywhere. But in terms of what's right for us, I would like to go with the initial staff proposal, whether that's Vilio or whether now it's called Aniv or whatever it may be, see if it's successful, and then build upon that, rather than trying to throw 750 vehicles on the streets of Glendale when we just had a discussion about bicycle safety and the safety of scooters, I guess now as well, on the streets of Glendale.
Thank you. I mean, in the beginning, when I started, I asked how this came about to be from 500 to 750. Still, my question is why we went from 500 to 750. We went through this, as my colleague Ms. Devine also mentioned, before in 2018 and 19. And we had this, we were worried to have bicycles and scooters, specifically. I guess the police department also at that time had some recommendations. And we saw pictures. I forgot the gentleman would come here and was complaining about the scooters and bringing the pictures. I don't see him recently to connect with us. I forgot his name.
Passarella.
Yes, Passarella. That's right.
Tony.
Mr. Passarella would come and show pictures of broken legs and, other problems the scooters will create. And that's why we were against it. We went through this before, and now all of a sudden, from not only 500, as has been mentioned here by all my colleagues, We went to 750. In my opinion, what I want to suggest, as I guess everybody alluded to that, not approve motion to increase device count, direct staff to select a different bicycle vendor, and approve motion to return it for further study and look into this matter. That's my suggestion. If my colleagues are
Could
okay.
I just ask a question?
Yes, Mr. Barton.
Yeah, would my colleagues be okay to, splitting this up so that we follow staff's recommendation on wheels? Because I think if we're going to go scooters, that's a nice approach to scooters, right? So if we were to go with wheels, but then on the bicycle side, we go back to the drawing board, we talk to the next two, see if we can get a program that doesn't require scooters so that we can end up with our 500 devices, right? And we can talk to Blue Duck and we can talk to Aniv and, and if it's close, let's find a way to favor, our local business. If it's not close, I mean, ultimately, I think the more important thing is that we have a safe program that people use. But if it's close, let's favor our, local company. Can we do it that way? Can we kind of say, okay, on Lime, but on the bicycles, go back and relook at it?
I support that, Mr.
I want to give the chance to Ms. Devine, but before we go, why we have to have 250 and 250? Isn't that possible, like 300 bicycle, 200 scooters? Because for some reason, I see the scooters on the street, people, they are afraid. They go, like motorcycle and scooters, they are trying to move around because they're worried that, drivers I'm talking about, somehow they're apprehended or scared of the scooter drivers. So Mr. Lanzafame wants to answer?
Mr. Mayor, I can't answer the question other than this was the direction that that the council gave staff back in September. You did ask for separate proposals so that you could do bikes or scooters or both, but it was decided that we would have equal amounts, 250.
Oh, we said that? Okay, if we said that, I'm sorry, I was not remembering.
I didn't say that.
No, I don't remember if I said to be equal amount. We said 500.
Equal amounts, but I may have done.
Okay, they say we said it, but I wish I wouldn't say that, but however, because scooters to me is very dangerous anyway. So is my colleagues agree to send back for further study?
Well, Mr. Mayor, my proposal, if there's support for it, is to go ahead with wheels, because that's a different type of scooter. That's a sit-down scooter, and it appears to be a lot safer. Now, maybe we can, as Councilmember Devine said, we can make sure we look at whatever safety data they have. But my proposal would be we go ahead with that. As for the bicycles, we find somebody who can do an all bicycle program for us.
All right, Ms. Devine.
Yeah, I would at this point. I agree with Councilmember Kasakian. I think we should start small. 250 bicycles, e-bikes, regular bicycles, and that's we're not talking about the entire city either. You're talking about throwing 700 vehicles into that small inner city, let's call it, downtown. And so that's a big problem for me. So I agree with him. I think we should go back to the local, I think we'll talk to them, the local vendors, and start with a small amount of scooters, no scooters, e-bikes, no scooters, and then see how that works. If we're not seeing a visual impact, if we're not seeing accidents, and we can see that, hey, this is a success, it's safe, people love it, then we can move on to maybe a bigger program, maybe get to the wheels, But I think we need to, that's why we have a pilot program. It's a test. We want to see how this program grows over in our city. Is it going to be, it could be a disaster for all we know. I mean, there could be bikes everywhere. We don't know that. So that's why we're trying it. And I think if we try, we start small, start local. I mean, jobs was one of the reasons that we wanted to even start a program like this, was we felt that there would be jobs for community members, our residents. And now all of a sudden they're in Culver City and they're hiring the county and et cetera, et cetera. So I'm for Mr. Kasakian, Councilmember Kasakian's idea of starting small and see how that works for 3 months, 6 months, a year, go from there.
Okay.
Thank
so
you.
Actually, we are not approving the motion. That's, I guess, everybody mentioned, right? And we will go back to the drawing board and look into the issue again. Is that what we want to do?
Well, I mean, I see two different motions here, Mr. Mayor. I see one by Kasakian Devine saying start with bikes. I see one from Brotman saying start with wheels. I support that, and then going back to bikes and dealing with the bikes. You may have to weigh in. I mean, Mr. Mayor, let us know which way you're thinking. So,
One thing I want to know, I want to see more bicycle than other scooter and motorcycle and those, because I'm worried about it, because younger people, they're gonna go around the cars, vehicles, and they will create problems at a later time. Mr. Brotman.
How about this? What if we were to move forward with wheels, but maybe a slightly smaller number, like 200, and we look at relook at the bicycle side for 300 devices. So we're doing both. We're doing small programs for these kind of unique scooters, and we're doing a small program for bicycles.
Can I ask a question, council member?
Yeah, Mr.
Can I just jump in? Would the inclusion of electric bikes suffice in replacement of the smaller scooters?
Yeah.
Because I really don't see, I mean, we're trying to run before we can walk, pun intended, I guess, since we're talking about mobility. But, those scooters all look they look adorable. I'm sure the helmets would look great on some of us as well, but throwing everything into the mix before we've had a chance to even try a program for 3 months for the first time, and the reactions to these other programs, whether it's by Lime or others in other communities, have been mixed. I mean, pulled out of San Diego because of regulations and complaints. We've all seen the scooters all over Los Angeles that have been strewn about that look very unseemly, regardless of how we feel about, mobility and the last mile transportation advantages. I can't seem to understand why we need to put the small scooters on the streets now, when if we can talk to, again, Vilio or Aniv or whoever and say, hey, you had initially said you can provide electric bikes. Can you do that? That was from the last meeting. And by the way, I went back and I watched all of our meetings on this issue to get an understanding of where we were. And the main issue of connectivity with Metro has not been addressed with any of the current vendors in an adequate way. I wrote some of the terminology that was used in process, in development. It doesn't, I certainly am not satisfied with it, despite what the scoring was.
Marty, why don't you make a motion and we'll see where it goes.
Before you go to the motion, I would just want to say, having scooters or any motorcycle on the sidewalk, I mean, it really bothers me. Little kids, they jump or run. It's hard to control them. And this scooters comes. I mean, I cannot imagine we let the scooters on this city. It bothers me. Anyway.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion then that we begin our mobility project, our pilot program with 250 bicycles divided between e-bikes and regular bicycles. We try to go local, start a short program, 3 to 6 months, and see how it works, and then go from there.
I agree with that.
What does try to go local mean, Ms. Devine? Exclude everyone else except Aniv, or I think we should look at everyone.
Okay. We can take that part out if you'd like, but
Let's look at everyone, keeping in mind that Aniv is a local company.
All right, okay.
But like Mr. Brotman said, I'm agreeing with him a lot today. That the important thing is that they're managed well, that they maintain the equipment well, and it's a good fit with the city. That's primary. Next, we'd love to do a local hire and give local jobs.
And don't leave the bicycles on the sidewalk to make sure that they are not gonna.
Right, all of the ideas on how to solve that.
Well, Mr. City Attorney, before, I know Councilmember Devine made a motion, and depending on how the answer to this question goes, I'll second it, or maybe propose a substitute motion. What precludes us from reverting back to staff's original test pilot program?
I think the only thing we would need to do is we need to bring back a motion. We would need to, that's not on the agenda, so that, I mean, that's first, so we need to bring it back. You could direct us to bring that back for subsequent approval, or you could do this motion and direct staff to work with the 3 vendors I think it was 3 vendors who offered bikes, and then consider that as part of it and bring that back for a future decision. Because either way, it's gonna have to come back to council to make a decision on that. So I guess what I'm saying is you can incorporate that request into the motion, and we could bring all that back if the council desires. But today you couldn't approve that pilot project today, because it wasn't something that was listed on the agenda or part of this RFP process. But you could do it. You could provide direction to us to do it, to bring it back for future discussion.
Okay, I guess that's.
Would Councilmember Devine include that, bringing back the original staff proposal as part of the options?
Mr. Garcia?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Would Councilmember Devine accept that as part of her motion?
Yeah,
to include the original staff proposal?
Mr.
Yes.
Garcia, whatever he mentioned, that's what on
I think he's asking Councilman Devine if she'll make that part of her motion.
Sure, and I'm saying yes, I would.
Then I'll second it.
What was the original staff proposal?
The test project that they initially came to us with, to bring that back as an option for us to adopt.
It was like 300 bicycles divided into 2 e-bikes and regular bikes, and
it was just with one company?
It was a short program. It was, what did you say, Artie? 3 months?
3 months, possible cancellation, yes. And it was with the specific company. So make that whether.
Velio? Where's Velio now?
I believe Velio is Aniv.
Well, Velio went to Aniv. I mean, I got to read that report. I mean, I won't vote against this, but I have to get sort of up to speed on what we rejected previously. I was more focused on what was before us today, but we can discuss that, I guess, at that time.
Right, yeah. Okay, so that's the motion, and it's been seconded.
So can you explain the motion? So the motion is just to bring back the Velio proposal, or now in the form of Aniv? Is that what you're saying?
For staff to, go ahead, Mike.
I was going to, what I heard was to include that as part of the items to bring back, but also have further discussion with the proposers who proposed bicycles to see if they can do this proposed reduced alternative of the 250 bikes, 100 split, between electric and regular bikes, and incorporate the other elements that Ms. Devine mentioned.
Is that your motion, Mrs. Devine?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Mr. Kitakian
I'll second it.
All right. Is there any other comment? If it's not, I want to go to roll call. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Brotman?
Is that?
I guess I'll vote in favor of it. I would like to have seen more variety, but let's just get the ball rolling. So I'm a yes.
All right.
Devine?
Yes.
Kasakian?
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Mayor Agajanian.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, now, hold on.
Mayor, next item is 8E.
8E, okay. Next item, please, then.
City Attorney regarding consideration of findings regarding appeal of Design Review Board's approval of Design Review Board case number 2004770 located at 1248 Corona Drive. 1, motion denying the design review case and making findings in support thereof. 2, motion remanding the design review case to the Design Review Board for further consideration to reduce the size and massing of the proposed home with directions. 3, resolution adopting a mitigated negative declaration and mitigation monitoring and reporting program for the project at 1248 Corona Drive. 4, motion to sustain the Design Review Board's decision to approve the Design Review Board's application with conditions.
Thank you. I guess I have conflict on this item.
Correct, Mr. Mayor.
All right, so I step out and I will be back after you guys finish this item with your decision.
Sure. And I would just note, for the record, it's due to a campaign contribution, so that will be reflected in the record on this item, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Not by the property owner.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, is everyone else in? Everyone else is ending up for this? Okay.
Yes.
Ready.
So, so who do I go to? Mr. Garcia.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, Pro Tem, and members of council. The City Council held a public hearing on December 8th of 2020 regarding the design review case for 1248 Corona Drive. During that hearing, Councilmember Kasakian and Mayor Agajanian had recused themselves due to receiving a campaign contribution from one of the applicant's consultants, the soils engineer. And then during that hearing, with a 2-to-1 vote, the council directed us to prepare findings that would support reversing the DRB's decision, as the DRB had approved the design review case, and having us prepare those findings and present them to the council. Since that time, we did receive correspondence from council for the applicant. I provided some additional information to you on that. And the item that we've brought back to you are the findings for denial. We've also brought to you findings for a remand to the design review board, and also the council has the option to approve the project if it desired. I would note that the home is a proposed 2,299 square foot single family dwelling with an attached 540 square foot 2-car garage on a vacant 8,890 square foot lot. So the council held that hearing on December 8th. I would note that Councilmember Kasakian is permitted to participate as the conflict has ceased to exist, as long as he has reviewed the tape of the public hearing and reviewed the materials, reviewed the staff report. My understanding is, and he could correct me if I'm wrong, he has done that, so he is able to participate in this hearing, in this particular discussion of the findings that are before you. I would just note, with respect to a remand, if the council is inclined to remand the matter back to the design review board for further consideration, and the council had considered a remand with respect to reducing the mass and scale of the proposed home, that if it does remand it, that it provides some direction to the design review board on how to deal with that. The council's deliberation on December 8th focused on the length and width of the home, the monumental appearance of the home from the street. So it's the opinion of the staff to reduce that monumental appearance. The council would want to focus on the length and width of the home, as the council was focused at the time on the 82-foot wide house having that monumental appearance. So that's the way the motion is drafted for remand, if the council is inclined to go in that direction. And the planning staff and either Mr. Lanzafame or Mr. Calvert, I think, can address this as a recommendation to reduce the width of that house by a certain percentage, give that direction to the applicant as well as the design review board, and then they would obviously work that out at the design review board remand hearing. So you could do 10%, 15%, 20%, give some parameters to that for the design review board to consider if you're so inclined. So again, the options for you are to deny the project pursuant to the direction you previously gave, to remand it back to the DRB, or to approve the project. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I don't know if you have callers.
Yes, Mr. Garcia, I do have one caller.
So I don't know if you want to take the caller or if you have any questions.
Let's take the caller first, Aram.
Mayor Pro Tem, how many minutes would you like to give him?
3 minutes.
Eduardo, you're live. Eduardo?
Yes, hi. Good evening, council members. My name is Eduardo. I'm the owner and applicant for this project, and I'd like to request that the council not adopt the proposed motion revising the DRB approval and deny the project. I think the city design guidelines acknowledge the properties are not all the same and that the individual circumstances for this project site must be considered as part of the process. However, the design review is not to be used in obstruct development that otherwise allows for the general plan and zoning codes. The proposed motion is not tailored to improve the design of the residence potential on the site. By comparing the project site to downslope properties in lots that have featured entirely different from the site, the proposed motion would set an impossible standard for us to design a home that could receive the council's approval, and that's not the purpose of the design review. We've been working with the DRB for the last actually a little bit longer than 3 years, to incorporate their comments from staff in good faith. We've designed this project that follows the intent of the design guidelines, building into the hillside, using the house foundation to retain the hillside and no visible retaining walls, minimizing the grading on the site with an average slope of 70%. The house consists with patterns and developments of hillside areas in Adam Hills and throughout the city. It makes a good use of the long, shallow lot. Just in general, I think, throughout this whole long process, we think that we've came up with a really good design that meets all of the hillside ordinance guidelines, which is something that when we looked at it very closely, it actually wants us to make sure that we dig the house into the hillside so it fits into the natural formation. And that was something that we were able to achieve. Instead of sometimes, I know that it's been brought up in a couple of the meetings, instead of sitting on top of the hillside, kind of looking like a big projection from the natural hillside. When we talk about massing and scaling, our house has a very low profile from the sides, and it's actually the height and the length are very proportional to other properties on that site. There's a couple of addresses that we had submitted before. The house actually directly in front of us, that house is actually 84 feet long. Ours is 83 and change. So there's a lot of houses, if you drive around Corona or the two adjacent streets, they're actually the same length. It's not the common practice, but there is many houses that are in that range, anywhere from 75 all the way to 100 feet in width. So I'd like to request that the council propose, I guess, the approval, decide to stay with the original DRB decision of approval for the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other callers, Aram?
Yes, Mayor. There are two more. Sophia Estrada. Sophia, go ahead.
Hi. Thank you, Mayor and City Council members, for your time and attention. I'd like to make 3 points today. I'm one of the owners of the homes right above the proposed project. The first I want to talk about is the soil. The geotechnical engineer that the applicant hired produced a report on 2/27/2019, and on page 5, the engineer described the following 2 terms. Soil. Soil is defined as fine sand matrix that comes easily when mild pressure is applied. It's slightly moist to moist. Bedrock goes on to be defined as follows: moderately well indurated, crumbled to slightly friable, medium dense, slightly moist, medium brown. I'm sorry to get so technical, but this important detail tells you that the soil on this hill does not have the strength of granite. I submitted many pictures where there are 3 large areas of erosion, about 18 to 20 feet wide. The piles of dirt that the erosion leaves behind is just sandy soil. There are no rocks or boulders left behind. It's just the orange-brown dirt. The second point is the foundation. The project will allow an artificial wall to hold a soil foundation for 3 homes above it. Let me point out that these homes do not have caissons to support the foundation. If my home were to be built today, it would require 12 to 15 caissons. My home sits right on top of the dirt. This applicant is going to remove dirt on a 70% grade hillside that provides the foundation for these 3 homes. It's very possible that as they get underway with this project, they may have to excavate more than the proposed 1,100 cubic yards on the plans. Then what? The applicant will be required to build a larger wall, further undermining our foundation. The third point is emergency vehicles during construction. About 2 weeks ago, I emailed the City Council 3 instances in the past 2 months where emergency vehicles had a hard time navigating the subpar roads of Adams Hill. The winding, narrow roads do not allow the emergency vehicles to get to their emergency quickly. As an example, there was a fire on 1411 Columbia Drive. The fire engine had to hit 4 parked cars to get to the fire. Why do I know this? Because the fire truck that handled my 911 emergency, I had a 911 emergency about a month or so ago. The driver told me he had to hit 4 cars to get to the fire. So as the fire truck was leaving my house, I took a video of him driving down the narrow, windy road. He had to climb on top of the curb to avoid hitting a parked car. I only sent you a video with 8 seconds or 10 seconds, but the video is a minute long, and it shows how difficult it was for that fire engine to navigate. How do you propose to handle an emergency while the applicant is loading the dirt onto the truck? In summary, all that the neighbors and I have done is to bring to the city's attention how challenging this project poses to the foundation of the 3 homes above. Again, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, may I ask Mike Garcia a question?
Mr. Garcia?
Yes.
Can you comment on council's authority to consider this soil and geotechnical survey issue?
Councilmember Devine, so the soils condition and the impact, the geotechnical impacts were analyzed in the environmental document. So it is within the council's purview. If you feel, that was something that the council, for example, if the council is going to deny the project, it doesn't need to approve that environmental document. You certainly can rely on that with respect to denying a project if indeed there is substantial evidence that the project will have a significant impact. The comment I will make with regard to that is certainly there was a report prepared by the applicant's team, and there was, I believe, something submitted by the appellant. Our view of it, of reviewing that, was that the applicant's geotechnical report had appropriately analyzed the issue and had provided mitigation measures that are going to be, if it was approved, addressed by through building and safety conditions. So it's a kind of a long way of saying you can rely on it if there's substantial evidence that there is a geotechnical impact. From our viewpoint, I don't know that there is, and so I think that's why we focused a little bit more on the design conditions, whether you're going to approve it or deny it. Focus on the design review aspect of it. But again, it is within your purview to consider that, as long as there's substantial evidence supporting that decision.
Thank you.
May I ask a somewhat related question?
Yes, Mr. Brockman.
Is it appropriate for us to suggest that the applicant put up a performance bond to, address the concerns that neighbors have that this project will never get completed, that they'll run into all kinds of, geological issues that were not anticipated? I believe that some cities do that when there's a project that has a lot of risk like this one does.
Councilmember Brotman, we can We have in the past, in some cases, certainly on a hillside, required a performance bonds in conjunction with the grading permits. So that's something we can look at. And if that's the council direction, we'll unless there's a legal obstacle, we'll put that in the motion. Certainly, if that would only be required if you're going to approve the project. That would be a condition. You could also put it as a condition, a consideration if you're going to remand it back to the design review board.
Okay.
Okay, is there another caller?
Yes, Mayor, there's two more. Rondi Werner, you're live. Rondi?
Yes, hello, City Council members and Mayor Pro Tem. I'm just a little bit confused. There was an appeal to the Design Review Board decision in December, and the council voted to ask staff to prepare the findings in support of returning this back for redesign. So I feel like this is being tried a second time. I mean, people are presenting all this evidence and all this kind of thing. So this just seems highly unusual. I haven't seen this happen before. And I'm a little bit perplexed by that. So it seems like, when somebody pays $2,000 for an appeal, and then when they appear to win the appeal, and then later on it's like, well, I don't know, and all this kind of thing. I'm just a little bit confused, and I'm not a lawyer, but I'm just wondering what happened, because everyone in Adams Hill was under the impression that this appeal had been won, that this very high impact, dangerous project was not going to be inflicted on our neighborhood, and that's why there aren't tons of people calling today, because they thought they won the appeal. So I'm confused about how this is all coming out this way compared to other appeals that I've seen. Thank you.
Thank you. We have another caller.
Eliza Favela, you're next. Eliza? Go ahead.
Yes. Hi. I'm also an applicant, and I do want to say that our project is not a roof. I know that the neighbors have mentioned that there were a house in front of ours that never got built, but we're not related to that project. That's not a risk that you're running with us. And then also the appeal process. Yes, it costs the appellant $2,000, but I also want to say that we have been providing as much as we can with different reports to give the neighbors peace of mind that we will do everything in our hands to make sure that we build this house safely and per the guidelines. And so obviously that also has a cost to us. It's not just how they feel, but it's also everything that we do to make sure that they feel safe with this project. And then also comparing the project size to the council's properties and lots that have features entirely different from the site. Obviously, this house is a bit different than the ones behind us, but it's a lot smaller. We have a bigger lot than the houses behind our proposed home. And our proposed home is consistent with the pattern of development and hillside areas in the Adams Hills and throughout the city. And it's a good design. We had different architect reviewers and different professionals to speak on the design and then also on the soil. And they've given us their professional opinion. So we've actually spent a lot of time and resources to make sure that we present a good design, and also that to make sure that we give you even a vibration report to make sure that we're not compromising any of the foundations of the neighbor's house. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more callers?
That was the last caller, Mayor.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, if I could just briefly address Ms. Rondi's comments, because it's a fair question, actually. So the council did provide direction, did state it was a denial and provide direction to provide the findings. The decision, however, is not final until the council, unless and until the council adopts those findings. We brought back all of the potential options, given We received some correspondence from the applicant's legal counsel. We wanted the council to have all that information. The hearing is closed. I want to emphasize no new evidence has come in. It's based on the record that was presented. What we've heard today is essentially arguments from both the applicant and appellant, but I don't consider that to be evidence. It's just arguments on why the evidence that was submitted supports their case. So from an evidentiary perspective, you're not having new evidence, you're not having a new hearing, you're basing it on the hearing of December 8th, and we've presented the findings for you for the range of options for you to consider.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Garcia. So it's not over till it's over, essentially, and this is our opportunity to make a decision. Let's just go through so we can frame our comments. The first motion is to deny the design review case, which is the direction we were going last year. Next is to remand it to design review with additional points of consideration to reduce the size and the massing. There's a resolution to adopt the mitigated negative deck. When does that come in, Mr. Garcia?
So that's if the council is inclined to approve the project. So motion 1 is denying, motion 2 is remanding, and then items 3 and 4 are only if the council actually wants to approve the project.
Okay, so let's just go through. If there's any comments, then we can make motions and see where this lies.
Well,
Mr. Brotman.
I can tell you where I am on this. So, you know, when this came up, I voted to uphold the appeal and deny the project. I would be willing to support remanding the project back to the DRB, but I would lay out. I think I've got 5 things that I've written down here as far as direction to staff and the applicant and the DRB, I suppose. So I can do that now, or I can hold off and see what other people say.
It's a good time to hear it now so we can think about those as we speak.
Okay. Well, I would say number 1, as far as the width, I would say reduce the width. It's hard, 15%, let's say, is where I would come out. I would say another thing that I think could potentially help, diminish kind of that vertical presence on the street would be if we increase the setback at the street level by 1 foot to, I think it would be then 16 feet. Is that right? And on the second floor, an additional foot. So that would be number 2. Would be additional setbacks. Number 3, I think on the materials. The materials were kind of an industrial gray, and looking at the design guidelines, it talks about a color palette that blends in with the hillside, and I think that perhaps some of that massive imposing feeling would be diminished if we were to use some, maybe beige shades of brown or green as opposed to that industrial gray. So I would suggest that the DRB would look at those materials. There is a pretty, there's a garage door which has an acrylic surrounded, I think, by like a black grid. And it might present better if that were like a wood-like finish. And then my last point is what I asked for before would be imposing a performance bond. I don't know what the normal range would be, but 2, 3, 4% of the proposed work to give some comfort to the community that this thing is going to get finished. So those would be my 5 considerations for remanding it back to the DRB.
Thank you. Anyone else up? Ms. Devine. You're on mute.
I want everybody just to read my lips. I wasn't, I was not opposed to the construction on this lot from the beginning, and I still believe that the mass and scale are monumental, to give it a monumental appearance. So I would approve remanding it back to the DRB to further reduce the mass and scale. But I would, I think that the architecture is probably going to have something to do with the percentage of the width that we reduce it by. So I would say maybe 15 to 20% reduction in the width, depending on how it works out with the rooms. And as far as the 4 or 5, I am absolutely in favor of the performance bond. I think that's a must, especially to give the people, the residents that live above, some sort of peace of mind. And the other suggestions, conditions that Mr. Brotman brought up are okay with me. I think those are DRB, probably suggestions that have already been made at the DRB, but send them back. It's fine. I don't see anything wrong with that, and they can juggle that particular part of the design themselves. So that would be mine, is to approve motion 2 to remand to DRB.
Thank you. Mr. Kasakian.
Thank you. Well, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I did my homework. I watched the meeting. I made sure that there are no other conflicts, and there aren't. And this isn't an easy decision, because ultimately you look at that hillside and it makes you wonder, how in the world can anyone build something on the hillside with a 70% slope without damaging it? Obviously, there's been geological studies done from both sides, apparently, and contradicting more or less one another. But there's a plot of land there. There's a parcel, and there's multiple parcels that were combined. And I asked when these parcels were created, and apparently it was in the 1920s. And apparently, they're zoned for housing if it can be built. The problem is, to quote, I think it was Ian Malcolm from Jurassic Park that says, the people were so preoccupied with whether or not they didn't stop to think if they should. And certainly it's possible to say that you ask an engineer, and if our mayor was here, he'd probably agree, you can engineer anything, but that doesn't make it necessarily right to do. I do feel terrible for the people who bought this, who want to make it their home, because in looking at the plans and in hearing their testimony, I do get the impression that this is the home they want to live in. They want to make Glendale their home. It's certainly taken them a long time, and they've invested a lot of time into this process, but the proposal just doesn't feel right. The design doesn't look right. I'm not an expert, so I'm sorry if I'm somewhat inarticulate in trying to express why that is. I do agree that there needs to be some reduction and perhaps even the look of it in order for it to blend in better if something is built there. And I hope that the appellants realize that, the individuals who've bought this, if they meet the requirements set forth, are going to build something there. And in the spirit of being good neighbors and welcoming a couple to the neighborhood, there ought to be some sort of rapprochement and agreement among them as to what would be acceptable. But one of the issues is the height of this retaining wall that's proposed to go in. And our codes say that, it needs to not be necessarily visible. And part of the way of not making it visible is having this massive structure, or this larger structure that's supposed to hide the wall. And the house itself is, including the garage, comes close to 3,000 square feet, which is more than I think is acceptable or will look acceptable in that hillside. It would be easy to say nothing can be built there, but I don't think that's going to suffice. I don't think that's the issue here. I think what we need to do is remand this to DRB. I think the conditions that Councilmember Brotman articulated are fair and hopefully will be taken into consideration, including the one about the color palette used. Figuring out a way to make it look less intrusive. And I'll tell you why, because if we say okay to just this as it is right now, it's going to set a really bad precedent for that side of the hill on Corona and on other similar streets. And it's going to, not all projects are going to be the same. You're going to have projects that are going to come in that are not going to necessarily blend well or replicate what has been proposed. I think that they need to take another crack at it. And perhaps instead of going all the way to they go back to DRB, and DRB takes into consideration about lessening the mass, making it smaller, whether it's by 15% or 20%, finding a way to better have it fit in, and ensuring that the hill doesn't come crumbling down once construction begins. There was a lot of assurances made about staff being there as dirt was being removed to prevent dust from coming up. I hope that all of that, I would expect, rather, I should say, and I think all of council would expect that if any dirt is removed, that people are there observing it and making sure that there isn't any damage done that's going to cause more damage to the homes around it, either upslope or downslope. It's a very perilous place to construct something. So I do think that we need to send this back to design review, have them put their expert hats on, work with staff, and bring back, not bring back to us, hopefully approve something that is acceptable to all parties. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I should add, it's only appropriate that in the first meeting of Mr. Galanian as the bona fide city manager, we have a DRB appeal hearing. It's a, I think, rite of passage. So you're welcome, Mr. Galanian.
Thank you.
So I was, back when I was in favor of supporting the DRB proposal. I thought that the objections were not very well taken, particularly with the retaining wall item. The retaining wall is built and the house is built into the hill, and that's exactly what the hillside guidelines request. The the width, I guess, could be pared down, so I'm not opposed to any of the 5 items set forth by Mr. Brotman, reducing the width. He said 15, Ms. Devine said 20. So in that range, I think if we give that to DRB, the setback, additional setback, I'm okay with. The different use of materials, I'm okay with. The garage door, again, the different type of garage door, I'm fine. The performance bond, I'm fine. But, people are talking about the large mass of this house. But I want people to see, this is what's behind the house. You want large mass? I mean, this is large mass. And I think to hold the homeowner who wants to build something that's not even going to come up close to the footing of one of those large homes is a little bit unfair. So, I mean, I just keep that in mind. When I try and balance fairness and look at the overall neighborhood, I mean, these are huge, overwhelmingly tall homes. So I would, to get to the chase, I would support a remand to DRB with the 5 points raised by Mr. Brotman. Shall we consider that your motion, Mr. Brotman?
So moved.
Sorry, I'll make that a motion. If you'd like me to repeat it, I can do that.
Do you have it, Mr. Garcia? I tried to go through it.
I do. I mean, essentially reducing the width by 15%, and Councilman Rotman, you're okay with the range of 15 to 20%?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say no less than 15%.
No less than 15. Okay. Increase the setback at the street level by 1 foot, and the second floor by an additional foot. Change the materials from an industrial gray to a color palette that blends in with the hillside, using beiges or browns or other colors that fit with the hillside. Change the garage door finish from the acrylic to a wood-like finish, and requiring a performance bond for the grading work in the range of 2 to 4%.
That's it. You got everything.
That's the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Brotman,
Yes.
Devine,
Yes.
Kasakian,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Najarian.
Yes. That brings us to
The end.
public comment.
Oral communications.
Is there any?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, there is one person on the line.
We'll wait for the mayor to come in and close it up.
And while we wait for the mayor, I'd like to bring up a point. Today during the library discussion, there was a reference made to some legal issues, and there's this reference has been made previously, and I have to say that as a new council member, or maybe we are not so new anymore. It's been now almost a year, or we're creeping up on our oath of office anniversary. I have no idea what this issue is, and I would like to have a briefing on it, because it's becoming frustrating for there to be references to these legal issues that I have no idea what they're in regard to.
Councilmember Kasakian, we actually, as you noted in the briefings that came up too, so we will try to find the best time in the very near future to get a briefing for the entire council on the status of that litigation related to the library. So.
Call me.
Okay. I hope you guys had good time.
Mayor Agajanian,
We missed you, Mr. Mayor.
Do we have?
We are on item number 12, oral communications, and discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Council may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. The city manager may refer the matter to the appropriate department for investigation and report. I do have one caller, Mayor.
Let's go to our caller.
Herbert Milano, you're live. Herbert?
Good evening, Mayor Agajanian.
Good evening.
And City Council members. My name is Herbert Milano. Today, I see another hopeful day for the City of Glendale with the selection of Mr. Golanian to the City Manager's position. So I'd like to join all of you in offering my congratulations to our new City Manager. I've had the opportunity to interact with Mr. Golanian and found him to be a straight shooter and concerned about the city's infrastructure. And that really is very welcome from my perception. It is comforting to have someone with an engineering background at the main executive position of the city, and I'm hopeful that we will have a facts-based and empirical approach to governance. It has been 20 years since I began attending city council meetings, and that's over 600 meetings and a similar number of commission and board meetings that I've attended in all these years. And I'm hopeful that tonight, that clear performance measures and true transparency be the ethos that drives the policies and expenditures of the city. I am appreciative that this city council is truly interested in bringing to Glendale the best practices that other cities have adopted, and that the selection of Mr. Golanian is reflective of that intent. The role of the city manager extends beyond the direction and evaluation of the city's operations, the internal processes, staff development, and strategic planning. The city manager also serves to make the city council members aware of the complexity of issues that are not normally in your realm of personal experience as Glendale residents. I'm looking forward to watching the budget study session next month to see how this process reflects the major goals of the city regarding population growth, affordable housing, land use, parkland increase, effective mobility, traffic safety, and prudent expenditures. So I just wanted to express the hopeful feeling that I have about your decision and the change in direction that the city is having now with someone with the background of Mr. Galani. So I thank you all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Molano. Okay, do we have any new business?
We have one additional item of new business, Mr. Mayor. I would read the motion and then ask that somebody make it. So I'm asking for a motion that pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.1 and Article 8, Section 1 of the City Charter, that the council hereby approves the city attorney's appointment of David Leitenberg as Assistant City Attorney for the city. And further, that a written copy of this motion be transcribed, certified, and delivered to the city by the city clerk to the Office of the Civil Service Commission of the City of Glendale as and for the written statement required by Article 24, Section 5, Subsection 2 of the Charter.
Anybody wants to move this item?
I'll move the item.
Do I have a second? Ms. Devine, okay, thank you. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Brotman,
Yes.
Devine,
Yes.
Kasakian,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Mayor Agajanian.
Yes.
Thank you.
Before we adjourn, I just want to congratulate Mr. Rubik Golanian. This is the first day that you are the city manager. So far, we were calling you interim city manager. I'm very glad to call you a city manager. I'm proud of what you are doing. You're a good man, and with the experience, you have been here for years, 21 or 20 years. And then on behalf of all my council members, congratulate you again. And we hope you're going to lead us and make the life easier for us. Thank you. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Okay. With that said, the meeting is adjourned at 9:19 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night.